Chapter 1926. However, Yiqing Luo maintained a light smile from start to end. She narrowed her eyes and looked into their eyes. It was like watching a monkey show. That kind of contempt, insufferably arrogant. Zhao, Qian, Sun and Li, four young ladies' hearts were boiling with anger, and immediately four voices were heard as they directly attacked towards Yiqing Luo's direction. He made his move as soon as he said he would. Moreover, they were four young girls. Those directors wanted to protect Yiqing Luo. It was not convenient for him to fight with the young girl. Otherwise, if word of this got out, they were afraid that it would turn into them bullying the younger generation. That was exactly what Prime Minister Sun had in mind. The young ladies of the four families made their moves. Those self-proclaimed aloof directors didn't dare to make the first move to protect Yiqing Luo. Hey! How dare you all behave atrociously in front of Sister Qing Luo? She didn't care so much. The minute she saw someone attacking her sister Qing Luo, she immediately struck out a burst of profound energy, blocking in front of Yiqing Luo. Bang! The loud sound of someone slamming the table could be heard. The wooden table shattered into pieces. Shi Ruoyu stood up angrily. Despite his young age, his aura was terrifying. Prime Minister Sun, just how dissatisfied are you with my Shi clan and the Gathering Treasures Pavilion? Prime Minister Sun's eyes were full of anger. He was ready to risk everything and wasn't afraid of Shi Ruoyu's threat. I have no intention of becoming enemies with young Master Shi. I just want to take back the sky-recovering serene grass that I bid for with 70 million gold coins. Shi Ruoyu's expression sunk slightly. Since Qing Luo said that she didn't take the sky-returning vitality serene grass, then she didn't. This young master believes in Qing Luo's character. Young Master Shi, are you saying that I lied to all of you in front of all of you? Prime Minister Sun glared at him. The old man and the young man refused to give in to each other. The four ladies of the Zhao, Qian, Sun, and Li families were stopped by Shi Ruoxi. He immediately changed the direction of his attack, and once again attacked towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Shi Ruoxi's bright eyes suddenly flashed with a biting cold light. She raised her hand and pulled out the soft sword hidden in her sleeve, ready to attack. Little Shi. Yiqing Luo suddenly spoke out and stopped Shi Ruoxi's actions. They're just four trash that can't even be seen in public. If I let you do it, wouldn't it be dirtying my little Shi's slender and beautiful hands? Shi Ruoxi was stunned, and upon hearing Yiqing Luo's praise, her face immediately turned red. Sister Qing Luo only knows how to tease me. Yiqing Luo smiled slightly as she went forward and pressed Shi Ruoxi's shoulder, pulling her behind her. After that, her charming eyes raised slightly to form a long and narrow arc that was extremely bewitching. You four dregs. The lesson at the treasure-gathering pavilion isn't enough for you to remember, right? Then now, I will make you remember this day. When her words fell, Yiqing Luo's figure had already appeared beside the four young ladies of the Zhao, Qian, Sun and Li families. Everyone only saw a red afterimage flash. Soon after, miserable shrieks rose and fell one after another. In just a moment, the four young ladies were like a flower bud, blooming in all directions. Dong dong dong. Several heavy objects fell to the ground. The four young ladies fell heavily to the ground. Each posture was more twisted than the last. Miss! Miss! At the entrance, two middle-aged men suddenly rushed in and towards the four young ladies who were sent flying on the ground. They opened their throats and howled. One of the middle-aged men raised his head and stared angrily at Yiqing Luo. You vicious woman! How dare you hurt our miss? Chapter 1927. Yiqing Luo. This act was even more fake than her. Did he need to be so fake? It was obvious that the two crying girls were Prime Minister Sun's accomplices. As expected, the next moment, Prime Minister Sun's malicious eyes had already looked towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Yiqing Luo, I have already tried to reason with you nicely, but since you're so stubborn, and even hurt the three young ladies of the Zhao, Qian and Li family, if I don't seek justice for them, then I will be ashamed to call them uncle. He finally found a legitimate excuse. Prime Minister Sun raised his long sword as he closed in on Yiqing Luo's direction. That old face was filled with a sinister expression. Apparently, He wanted to take advantage of the situation to take Yiqing Luo's life. He was determined to take back the sky primordial serene grass. Yiqing Luo raised her brows as she squinted her eyes, using her own eyes to analyze Prime Minister Sun's attack in her mind. Her body instinctively started to display her footwork. Just at the moment when Prime Minister Sun approached, he only heard 2 bam-bam sounds. Immediately following that, Prime Minister Sun's body was flung out like a spinning top. His slightly plump body spun unsteadily on the spot a few times. Following that, his feet became unsteady as he tripped and fell onto the ground. That sound of him falling onto the ground was extremely ear-piercing. Prime Minister Sun laid on the ground in disbelief. What made him flushed red to his ears and extremely ashamed was his face was burning with intense pain. On his old face, there was a clear imprint of 5 fingers. Apparently, the 2 slaps earlier had landed on Prime Minister Sun's face. He was actually slapped twice by Yiqing Luo unknowingly. Moreover, he didn't even notice it. He was slapped onto the ground by Yiqing Luo's powerful strength. How could this be possible? How could this be possible? How could Yiqing Luo possibly make a move on him in such a short period of time without him noticing? Yiqing Luo was merely a 15-year-old young lady. No matter how the outside world had described it to be miraculous, that couldn't change the fact that Yiqing Luo was merely a 15-year-old young lady. Even if Yiqing Luo was a genius among geniuses, at most, she was in the Earth Profound grade. He was an Earth Profound 8th grade Profound practitioner. How could that bitch be stronger than him? It was impossible for him to lose to a 15-year-old girl. Prime Minister Sun's eyes were masked with an eerily cold intent, and immediately after, he faced Yiqing Luo's direction. As he exploded wave after wave of surging profound energy, waves of qi surged into the sky, stacking layer upon layer as they surged up. It was as if the mountains were collapsing, and the earth was splitting apart, as if it was going to devour everything in the world. In the Piaoxiang restaurant, there were not only guests like the dean. There were also quite a number of students who followed their own director and worshipped Yiqing Luo. When this imposing manner engulfed the Piaoxiang restaurant, the entire floating fragrance restaurant resounded with an earth-shattering sound. One could faintly hear the surrounding floors collapsing and teetering on the verge of collapse. There were also some low-level students who were directly forced to spit out a mouthful of blood under this powerful profound rank. You are the Prime Minister of a nation, yet you are so rude and overbearing. You don't care about the safety of the students of the various academies and forcibly release your profound energy. You are not fit to be the Prime Minister of the East Water Continent. Yiqing Luo gave a cold laugh as she faced Prime Minister Sun's imposing manner, which could swallow the mountains and rivers, totally not showing any signs of fear. Chapter 1928. Yiqing Luo, hand over the returning heaven primordial serene grass. His strong obsession made Prime Minister Sun unwilling to give up, even though he knew that Yiqing Luo's counterattack was extremely dangerous. His sinister eyes were filled with fanatical hatred. His aura, at this instance, surged up another grade. Faintly, it had already reached the momentum of Earth Profound 9th grade. He felt that he was about to break through the barrier. Prime Minister Sun's gaze towards Yiqing Luo was filled with excitement and fanaticism. He excitedly raised the long blade in his hand as he crazily slashed towards Yiqing Luo. The glower flame fan on Yiqing Luo's fingertips shone with a demonic red glow. Just as Prime Minister Sun was coming towards her, Yiqing Luo's fingertips moved. The glower flame fan suddenly opened up. An extremely powerful beam of profound energy poured down from the sky. The beautiful glower flame fan was like a blooming fireball. On Yiqing Luo's fingertips, it was like an excited fire elf, swimming in the flames. It gave off a dazzling brilliance. The fan's shadow flickered as the profound glow exploded. Prime Minister Sun sneered, totally disregarding Yiqing Luo. He only treated this as an opportunity for him to advance to Earth Profound 9th grade. As long as he advanced successfully, then he would get the returning Heaven Primordial Serene Grass back. He would be a Sky Mystic Overlord cultivator. He would be able to look down on everything. Look down on everything. Thinking in this way, Prime Minister Sun became more and more arrogant. Facing against Yi Qing Luo's profound glow, he directly collided against it. Bam! A loud sound was heard. An intense profound energy exploded at this instance. Ah! A blood-curdling scream was heard. A figure was seen flying out of the formation. The figure landed heavily on the ground, stirring up a cloud of dust. Prime Minister Sun's face was filled with blood and malevolence. He pressed his chest as he spat out a mouthful of blood. The surrounding deans saw it very clearly. The gazes they shot towards Yi Qing Luo were filled with disbelief. If it was before, they had heard about Yi Qing Luo's various legends, or even the matter of Yi Qing Luo sealing the King of Darkness's consciousness. The various academies' directors didn't believe it completely. They believed that it was Yi Qing Luo who saved their students. But they didn't believe that it was Yi Qing Luo who had saved their students on her own. But at this moment, he had personally witnessed Yi Qing Luo going head-on against an earth-profound 8th-grade high-leveled cultivator. Prime Minister Sunday Yi Qing Luo was actually unscathed. Furthermore, his expression was one of contentment, as if he hadn't expended any energy at all. On the contrary, Prime Minister Sun was suppressed by Yi Qing Luo's profound energy, till he had no way to resist at all. And some of the higher-level profound practitioners of the Earth-profound realm were even more clear about what had happened just now. Prime Minister Sun's dark force suddenly burst out. They could feel it clearly. It was obvious that Prime Minister Sun had already advanced to the 9th grade of the Earth-profound realm under the stimulation just now. This meant that Prime Minister Sun already had the strength of a 9th grade Earth Xian. But even so, he was still suppressed by Yi Qing Luo till he had no way to retaliate. Earlier, Yi Qing Luo had not done any strange actions at all. It was just a simple wave of the glowing flame fan. Then, Prime Minister Sun was sent flying backward. The raging profound energy was still spreading in the air. Prime Minister Sun's flame, which was surging, suddenly stopped at the instance when he was struck by Yi Qing Luo's profound energy. To the cultivators, they were the clearest on what this indicated. Prime Minister Sun's chance to advance to the 9th grade of the Earth-profound realm had already been destroyed. What's more, Prime Minister Sun's profound jade heart had also suffered a backlash because of this accident, which meant the current Prime Minister Sun had not only lost the chance to advance to the 9th grade of the Earth-profound realm, and his profound grade had been lowered. Chapter 1929. Of course, this didn't mean that Prime Minister Sun's profound grade was completely countered and could no longer be restored to its original profound grade. But it also didn't mean that Prime Minister Sun's profound grade could be restored. Prime Minister Sun's strength from the backlash had directly become an Earth-profound 6th grade cultivator. Moreover, he was unable to fully unleash his 6th grade profound energy. Otherwise, his profound jade heart would face the situation of his profound qi becoming unstable. In other words, the consequences of Prime Minister Sun being heavily injured by Yi Qing Luo was that the latter half of his life would be ruined. Cough. Cough cough. Large mouthfuls of blood gushed out from Prime Minister Sun's mouth. Those two middle-aged men who were crying about Zhao Qian's son and Miss Li could no longer pretend as they pounced towards Prime Minister Sun. Prime Minister! Prime Minister! Prime Minister Sun's body trembled as his pair of venomous eyes were filled with helplessness and hatred. He stared fiercely at Yi Qing Luo. If it wasn't for Yi Qing Luo's appearance, how could he have fallen to such a state? Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as her eyes were filled with ridicule and ridicule. She sneered as her lips curled upwards as she looked at Prime Minister Sun, as though she was looking at a dead object. Hate. He hated her. Yi Qing Luo scoffed as she slowly walked towards Prime Minister Sunday. She crossed her arms in front of her chest as her long and narrow eyes rose slightly. Prime Minister Sun, this time, your dream of being a sky mystic overlord will be completely shattered. You slut. Prime Minister Sun coughed as he spat out the words. Yi Qing Luo covered her mouth as she laughed delightfully. So in Prime Minister Sun's mind, a weak woman like me, facing the East Continent's Prime Minister, can only stand there obediently and let you hit me. Then that's called not slut. She smiled as she raised her hand and with a paw, she slapped Prime Minister Sun's face. That loud sound made Prime Minister Sun's blood spurt out once again. Yiqing Luo retracted her hand as she smiled at Prime Minister Sun. Prime Minister Sun is indeed not slut. Puffed. The surrounding onlookers couldn't help but laugh out loud. One of them laughed, and the people around him laughed as well. No one knew if they were laughing at Yiqing Luo's humor. Or was he laughing at Yiqing Luo's wit? Or was he laughing at Prime Minister Sun? Prime Minister Sun's face turned green and red as anger surged in his chest. He was about to advance to the earth-profound 9th grade. But Yiqing Luo had turned him into a 6th grade trash. And now, he was humiliating him in front of the deans of the continents. Prime Minister Sun's eyes were filled with venom. He couldn't wait to use his eyes to dismember Yiqing Luo into thousands of pieces. Stare at me. Yiqing Luo raised her brows as she approached him smilingly. Before he leaned over, Prime Minister Sun had already shrunk back in terror. His eyes widened as he gritted his teeth and stared at Yiqing Luo fiercely. What are you trying to do? This minister is the Prime Minister of the East Water Continent. If you dare to touch this minister again, the East Water Continent will never let you off. Guards, why are you guys still standing there? Hurry up and capture this slut who tried to assassinate me. Prime Minister Sun roared as he looked at the group of black-clothed men surrounding the fragrance restaurant. Those 100 over black-clothed men were about to take action after they received the order. Shi Rua Yu and the rest of Devil Class's youngsters had already dashed in front of those black-clothed men. This young master wants to see who dares to make a move. Prime Minister Sun was so infuriated that he clenched his teeth. Do you really want to go against my East Water Continent? What's the Prime Minister of East Water Continent? Yiqing Luo's chilly sneer was heard leisurely. Prime Minister Sun must have forgotten. I am the West Water Continent's Three Springs sect. Young Master. Sect. Lord. Star. Chapter 1930. As everyone knew, on the 4 continents, the most respected people were not the imperial family, but the 4 great sects of the 4 continents. It was rumored that they were the guardians of the Nirvana realm, guarding the tomb of the divine emperor of the god race. Even now, the Three Springs sect was not what it used to be because of the current sect master. But at the very least, he still carried the title of one of the 4 great sections. If it was a matter of status, no matter what, it was Yiqing Luo who was the West Continent's Three Springs sect's young matriarch, who was more respectable. Even though the former Yiqing Luo had the title of young matriarch, but had no real power. But the current Yiqing Luo was obviously the future patriarch of Three Springs sect. Prime Minister Sun actually dared to use his prime minister position to oppress Yiqing Luo? This was simply a slap in the face. Everyone looked at Prime Minister Sun with ridicule in their eyes. He seemed to be mocking Prime Minister Sun for overestimating himself. Prime Minister Sun was forced to the ground. His cheeks had already turned red and swollen from Yiqing Luo's palms. His old face looked extremely dejected. His eyes were wide open, making his face look even more hideous and terrifying. Yiqing Luo's brows rose frivolously as she met Prime Minister Sun's gaze without any fear as she gave a meaningful smile. Now, what else can Prime Minister Sun rely on to negotiate terms with me? Although Yiqing Luo wasn't considered as a righteous person. However, he was definitely not a kind-hearted person. If it wasn't for Prime Minister Sun using his title as the Prime Minister to give Miss Zhao, Miss Qian, Miss Sun and Miss Li the right to flaunt their prowess and provoke her, she wouldn't have anything to do with Prime Minister Sunday. Or rather, after the Devil Class students had snatched the returning Sky Yuan serene grass. The method he adopted was to use the soft approach first, and then the hard approach. Perhaps she would be amenable to coaxing, but not coercion? However, Prime Minister Sun had to use this method to solve the problem. He couldn't blame her for using the same violent method to strike back at his decision. Sun Qing seemed to have thought of something when he heard one of Yiqing Luo's words. As his eyes suddenly filled with ridicule, he stared at Yiqing Luo, his eyes filled with sympathy, as though he was ridiculing her. That gaze made Yiqing Luo sick of it. She furrowed her brows in displeasure. Just as he raised his hand, he saw Prime Minister Sun grinning mockingly. Three Springs Sect. Ha ha ha. You still want to rely on the Three Springs Sect. The current Three Springs Sect had already changed. The new sect master has already stripped you of your position as the young sect master. And, he smiled coldly. When he saw the astonishment in Yi Qing Luo's eyes, he laughed even more savagely. That's right. Not only have you lost your identity as the Three Springs Sect's young sect leader, but the new sect leader has also ordered the arrest of a traitor like you. Ha ha ha. You didn't expect it, right? Ha ha ha. You didn't expect it, right? As he laughed, he spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. However, he was still laughing maniacally. Prime Minister Sun's words indeed made Yi Qing Luo stunned. Her eyes flickered, and a trace of coldness appeared in her charming eyes. Tell me clearly, what happened to the Three Springs Sect? What new sect master? Traitor of the Three Springs Sect? She had only left the Western continent for less than a month. Something big happened in the Western continent? Don't believe what I said. Prime Minister Sun could tell how much importance Yi Qing Luo placed on the Three Springs Sect. Looking at Yi Qing Luo's pale face, he laughed so hard that he couldn't stop coughing, but he still couldn't stop laughing. The news from the Western continent has gradually spread to the various continents. There are so many deans from various academies present, so I'm sure they have their own channels to find out about this news. Star. Chapter 1931. The dean's faces darkened at once. Their expressions all fell into Yi Qing Luo's eyes. Clenching her slender fingers, she narrowed her eyes and looked coldly at the president of Nantao Academy. Is what Prime Minister Sun said true? Prime Minister Sun did not speak in private. The people around them heard it clearly. When Yi Qing Luo asked this question, the principals immediately shifted their gazes away, not daring to look at Qin Nan. Dean Nantao, who had been called out, could only brace himself and reply. In the past 2 days, there have been rumors that you were kidnapped. Our attention has been focused on searching for you. We have yet to verify the news from the West continent. They had indeed learned of the changes that had occurred in the West Wave continent through their own channels. However, he did not think too much about it. He wanted to wait until the matter of the South Wave continent was resolved before investigating the West Wave continent. Unexpectedly, Prime Minister Sun already knew what had happened in the West continent. Clearly, this matter had something to do with the Three Springs Sect. Qing Luo, I'll get someone to find out more about Three Springs Sect. Shiruoyu had already started to make arrangements. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes as her gaze was extremely cold. She suddenly bent down and grabbed Prime Minister Sun's collar. What happened to the Three Springs Sect? Who is the new sect leader? Prime Minister Sun was laughing so hard that he was bleeding. His malevolent face stared maliciously at Yi Qing Luo as he laughed coldly. Ha ha ha. This minister will not say anything. Little slut. You've lost the position of young sect master that you're so proud of. Now you're just a traitor that everyone wants to beat up. Ha ha ha. Yi Qing Luo clenched her fists. Little bitch. Hand over the returning Heaven Yuan serene grass. I will tell you about the Three Springs Sect, or else. The Three Springs Sect will soon come to capture you, the traitor. As though he saw the forbearance in Yi Qing Luo's eyes, Prime Minister Sun's smile grew wider. Prime Minister Sun's complacent expression caused her to feel even more irritated in her heart. In South Tide Continent's territory, Yi Qing Luo could not kill Prime Minister Sunday otherwise. He would be bringing shame to the South Waves continent. But she could boldly make Prime Minister Sun's life a living hell. Just as Prime Minister Sun was laughing loudly, something cold slid down his throat. Prime Minister Sun immediately slapped his mouth helplessly. Little bitch, what did you give me to eat? Yi Qing Luo's lips curled into an eerie sneer, as she didn't even bother to take a look at Premier Sun, as she lifted her leg and dashed out of the restaurant. Prime Minister Sun was about to get up and grab Yi Qing Luo. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his body. It was as if thousands of silver needles had pierced into his bones. Sometimes itching, sometimes stinging. In particular, the bursts of piercing pain were all aimed at the most painful parts of the bones. Each burst of tingling feeling down. It was as if his bones were broken, and his limbs were torn apart. Then, they were reconnected and torn again. He was in so much pain that his entire face was contorted. He fell to the ground and screamed. The deans nearby patted their chests and let out relieved sighs. Fortunately, they did not offend that little devil. The torture methods of this little ancestor were truly horrifying. He didn't know what kind of strange things she was carrying on her. Shiruashi and her siblings, and those devil-class students had no mood to bother about Prime Minister Sunday. Chapter 1932. No one had noticed that somewhere on the second floor, a red figure had stopped in his tracks, standing by the side of the railing. The young man's face was as cold as ice, without any emotions. A blazing red robe matched him perfectly, without any sense of incongruity. His 5 fingers were clenched tightly, clasping the top of the railing. A pair of cold black eyes gazed at Yiqing Luo's departing figure without blinking. Earlier, it was just a short moment. He couldn't help but rush to the first floor, to teach Prime Minister Sun a lesson, and to tell her all the news about Three Springs sect. But eventually he stopped in his tracks. He was already very clear in his heart. That young lady wasn't the young lady he was looking for. He shouldn't place his vision on her. But not knowing why, even though he knew that she wasn't her. In his heart, in his mind, it was all about her figure. 5 fingers tightened again. The railing broke with a creak. Yiqing Luo's speed was extremely fast, as she rushed back to room 1. In the eyes of outsiders, perhaps they thought that Yiqing Luo had a deep obsession with the position of the young matriarch of Three Springs sect. But what Yiqing Luo was worried about was not the position of the young matriarch. Attending the South Continent's exchange meet, Yi Fengyu didn't participate, but stayed in the Yi family. If there was a change in Three Springs sect, Yi Fengyu would definitely be in danger. No matter who the new matriarch was, he would not let him off. There was also her loyal servant, Ziling, who was thinking of bringing her out of the Three Springs sect. Rather than wasting time here to interrogate Prime Minister Sunday, why not directly return to room 1, to settle the matters of those students? She had to rush back to the West Continent immediately, to see what changes had happened to Three Springs sect. As the situation was urgent, Yiqing Luo didn't stay for too long. She told Xiao Jin about the matter in a concise and comprehensive manner. She asked Xiao Jin to stay in the South Continent until Yan Xiaoyi recovered, before returning to the West Continent with the Devil-class students and Heavenly Academy. As for her, Dmo Xian, Long Yunzhan and the rest, they rode on Shiju and Little Nine. By the time the vice principal and a bunch of students reached room 1, Yiqing Luo and the rest had already left. At this moment, Yiqing Luo's thoughts had already flown to the West Continent. Dmo Xian hugged her petite body tightly as he comforted her in a low voice. He had already spread the news. Once they arrived at the Western Continent, someone would inform them of the recent happenings in the Western Continent. Yiqing Luo also knew that the only thing she could do now was to calm her own emotions and wait till they reached the West Continent before she could fully devote herself into the battle. However, when he thought of his silly brother and Ziling, whose leg had not fully recovered, he felt a little guilty. She couldn't help but worry. Shiju and Little Nine were extremely fast. But no matter how fast they were, it would take at least 2 days to travel from the South Wave Continent to the West Wave Continent. Moreover, Shiju and Little Nine still needed to rest. Therefore, by the time they arrived at the West Continent, it was already 3 days later. Before they even got close to the West Continent, Yiqing Luo already sensed the strange atmosphere in the West Continent. It was extremely strange and abnormal. Yiqing Luo and the rest got down from Shiju and Little Nine's body in advance, and changed their appearances, making some changes. Just as he was about to approach Three Springs City to look for the person arranged by Dmo Xian, suddenly, a tall man stumbled into the group of them. Yiqing Luo's sharp body tried to evade him. That person's large palm had already landed on her shoulder. A low hoarse voice was heard by the side of her ear. "It's me, follow me. Star." Chapter 1933. Yiqing Luo's eyes narrowed as she stopped in her tracks. After that, A group of people walked out of the queue and headed towards the direction of the city gate. On top of the city gate's wall, a gorgeous lady dressed in gorgeous clothes was escorted by the guards as she slowly walked over. The lady stood on top of the city gate as her sinister beautiful eyes swept across the bustling crowd below. She narrowed her eyes as her voice was filled with arrogance. "Haven't found the person yet?" The guard's face was filled with flattery. "Eldest young Miss Yi, don't worry. As long as the Yi family's traitor enters the city, we will do our best to capture the traitor." The lady scoffed lightly as a chilly glint flashed past her eyes. "You bunch of trash. You can't even do such a small thing. How are you going to capture the Yi family's traitor? I really don't know what's the use of Three Springs City keeping you bunch of trash." The faces of the guards behind her sunk instantly, but no matter how unhappy they were, they still had to maintain a smile on their faces as they carefully responded to the lady. Suddenly, the lady's expression changed abruptly. Her eyes were fixed on a spot in the crowd in front of her. Following that, the lady leaped up and flipped down from the wall. "Eldest young Miss Yi! Eldest young Miss Yi!" The guards were in a mess. The commoners or merchants who were entering the city were all shocked when a gorgeous lady suddenly leaped down from the sky. However, that lady pushed the crowd aside as her gaze frantically searched through the crowd. Instantly, the outside of the city gate was in a mess. A few hundred meters away from Three Springs City, in a more secluded abandoned temple, Yi Qingluo had yet to open her mouth when she saw the man in front of her walking straight to the back of the Buddha statue, only to hear a creak sound of stone rubbing against each other. Behind the Buddha statue, a secret entrance appeared. Yi Qingluo raised her brows as she sized up the man with interest. "Zifan, you also made a secret entrance behind the ruined temple. Don't tell me you've long guessed that one day our Yi family would need to rely on this secret entrance of yours to escape?" She laughed out teasingly as she bent over and entered the secret entrance. The man shook his head as he laughed lightly. "I don't have the ability to predict the future. This secret entrance was made by Zifei that lad out of boredom. Although the tunnel was roughly dug, it was enough for a tall man to walk." Yi Qingluo and the rest walked along the secret path for a short while before they saw the lights in front. Following that, a figure walked out. "Big brother, you're finally back. How is it, have you found Qingluo?" The last word had yet to leave his mouth. When that person saw Yi Qingluo, his eyes suddenly lit up. "Qingluo! Qingluo! You're finally back." Looking at the young face in front of her, revealing a joyful expression, Yi Qingluo couldn't help but laugh. What happened to Three Springs sect? Why are the two brothers of the Mu family hiding in this secret passage? He was right. The one who led Yi Qingluo and her entourage to the secret passage was Mu family's eldest young master, Mu Zifan. And this person who was currently looking at her with wild joy was precisely the Mu family's second young master, Mu Zifei. She didn't expect to be recognized by Mu Zifan as soon as she returned to the Western continent. Could it be that her disguise had deteriorated? "It's its sister. Is sister back?" Suddenly, a trembling voice sounded from the secret chamber. Following that, the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground was heard. A woman's shocked voice was heard. "Young master, don't move. Young master." Yi Qingluo's expression changed as she followed the voice and rushed into the chamber. Beside the stone bed at the side of the secret room, a delicate-looking youth fell to the ground in a sorry state. The young man was wrapped in bandages, and the bandages were full of mottled blood stains. Star. Chapter 1934. Because of the young man's large movements, the bandage on his body was once again filled with blood. The girl squatting by the side with a sobbing tone tried to help the young man back to the bed. But the young man insisted on climbing out of the bed. "Young master, don't move. If you continue to move, you can't use your hands and feet." The girl cried with tears all over her face. "Let me go. I want to see my sister. I want." He hadn't finished his words. An extremely clear voice could be heard saying, "Ziling, let him go." The girl squatting on the ground heard the words, suddenly raised her head, and looked in front of her in surprise. A young girl in red stood in front of them coldly, like a waterfall of fine black hair, simply tied up at the temples of a young girl. That face ordinary and unremarkable, but that pair of charming eyes. Just one look, they recognized the identity of the girl. Ziling's throat was dry. After a long time, she spat out 2 words. Miss. Yiqing Luo's expression was indifferent. Her eyes were also emotionless as she stared coldly at the 2 people in front of her. Ziling, come here. Ziling instinctively wanted to get up, but the muffled groan of the young man beside her made her heart hurt. If she really let go of his hand, he would certainly not be able to stabilize his body, he would fall. Ziling's lips trembled, just as she was about to open her mouth to plead for him. But she was interrupted by Yiqing Luo's cold voice. Ziling, you are my servant. Her voice deepened a few notches. Ziling knew that this was the last sign of Yiqing Luo's tolerance. If she insisted on supporting Yifengyu, not to mention whether she would be driven out by Yiqing Luo, she was afraid that Yifengyu would also be implicated because of this. What's more, Yiqing Luo would not bear to let him get hurt. Ziling pursed her lips and carefully let go of Yifengyu's hand. Immediately, she slowly walked to Yiqing Luo's side. The young girl had already shed the immaturity she once had. She had a pretty face that was extremely delicate and pretty. Her leg had been healed, walking steadily. No one could tell that she was once a disabled person. Yiqing Luo just took a glance and saw that the current Ziling was actually a cultivator in the yellow profound 7th grade realm. Although this profound grade was extremely low for Yiqing Luo. However, with Ziling's aptitude, in just a few months, from an ordinary person with no cultivation foundation, she became a profound practitioner. It could be seen that he was no longer trash. She just lacked an opportunity. Yiqing Luo withdrew her gaze from Ziling. Then it landed on Yifengyu. She narrowed her eyes and crossed her arms over her chest. She looked at the young man who was kneeling on the ground and panting heavily. She curled her lips into a mocking sneer. Didn't you say that you don't want your hands and feet anymore? That you don't even want your life anymore? Then stand up and walk in front of me. Miss. Ziling bit her lower lip, tears welling up in her eyes. The Mu brothers who followed behind her coughed lightly. Qing Luo, it's not easy for you 2 to meet. Don't make the atmosphere so stiff. Yiqing Luo sneered. Her eyes were sneering. Yes, because I was worried about him, worried about what happened to Three Springs sect. I rushed back from the southern continent, did not dare to stop for even a moment. It was not easy to rush back, only to find out that my brother is not afraid of death. Sister. Yifengyu was in so much pain that he sucked in a breath of cold air. His fair face was drenched in sweat. His voice trembled as he called out to Yiqing Luo. Don't call me sister. I don't have a brother like you who doesn't take his own body seriously. Yiqing Luo scolded in a low voice. Star. Chapter 1935. Qing Luo. Xiao Yu also knows his mistake. Don't blame him. If he continues to lie down like this, not to mention his feet and hands won't recover, I reckon he will die from excessive blood loss. Mu Zifei tried to smooth things over, quickly walked towards Yifengyu, bent down and prepared to help him up. No need to help him. Yiqing Luo coldly glanced at Mu Zifei. Mu Zifei's body stiffened, pausing his actions. Mu Zifan clutched his chest, obediently shut his mouth and didn't dare to speak. Obviously changed into an ordinary face, thrown into the crowd. Absolutely no one would be able to pick out that kind of face. But unfortunately, his aura was still so strong, especially when he met her enchanting eyes that seemed to have been frozen for 1,000 years. They were so stunned that they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. There was a strange silence in the secret chamber. The Mu brothers looked at each other, seemingly urging each other to break the deadlock. However, after being swept by Yiqing Luo's gaze, both of them didn't dare to speak lightly. Ziling was even more afraid to speak. And Yiqing Luo and the rest knew Yiqing Luo's character very well. Even if they opened their mouths to plead for Yifengyu, as long as Yiqing Luo was still angry, Yifengyu still couldn't understand where he went wrong. Yiqing Luo wouldn't be the slightest bit lenient. Just when everyone's heart was in a state of turmoil, She saw a purple figure slowly walking to Yiqing Luo's back, raised his palm and gently placed it on her head. The man also had an ordinary face, but no one would be able to think of him as ordinary and mediocre. The man's temperament was out of this world, like a banished immortal. Looking at Yiqing Luo's eyes, it was full of pampering and gentleness. His big palm gently stroked Yiqing Luo's head, smiling warmly. Xiao Yu already knows his mistake. Don't punish him like this. Isn't punishing him also punishing yourself? The Mu brothers' vision fell onto Dmo Xian in unison. Their guess was right. This man was the disguised Dmo Xian. Being touched so gently by the man, Yiqing Luo's gloomy cold air gradually dissipated by more than half. She unhappily swatted away the hand on her head and stared resentfully at Dmo Xian. She was teaching Yifengyu that no matter what, he must always value his own life. However, she could see that Yifengyu's body had indeed reached its limit. His heart was aching. However, he could only endure the pain. He had already suffered such a serious injury. His hands and feet were about to be crippled. However, after hearing her voice, he didn't even care about his own body. He just wanted to rush out of the bed and see her. Did he think that being so agitated and doing this meant that he cared about her, and that he was constantly worried about her? No. This kind of behavior, Yiqing Luo only wanted to comment on one word. That was stupidity. Big sister, I know I was wrong. Yifengyu's voice was strained, and all that was left was the sound of his breathing. He fiercely sucked in a breath of cold air and spoke again. Sister, please, help me back to the bed. Yiqing Luo's tensed expression, under Yifengyu's weak pleading, smoothly collapsed. She quickly walked forward and bent down to help Yifengyu up. She couldn't help but scold him. You've learned your lesson, haven't you? Yifengyu was sent to the back of the stone bed. Everyone behind him heaved a sigh of relief. Mu Zifei immediately went forward and took out a new bandage and medicine. Your injury is very serious. If you don't want to become a cripple, then obediently lie on the bed and don't move around. Yifengyu obediently nodded. Chapter 1936. Tell me, what happened to Three Springs sect? What's the situation in Three Springs City now? Yiqing Luo looked at Mu Zifan. Mu Zifan's complexion immediately became grave. They casually found a place to sit down. Following that, he told Yiqing Luo everything that had happened during this period of time. Just 6 days ago, which was also the day when Yiqing Luo went missing in South Tide Continent. The Three Springs sect was in turmoil. Yi Tianquang, the sect master of the Three Springs sect, was found to be seriously ill in bed, and no one could cure him. Even though the Three Springs sect's status in the West Wave continent had declined, it was still one of the 4 great sects that guarded the god race. Such a big sect. He couldn't be without a master for even a day. As the young sect matriarch, Yiqing Luo was still in South Tide Continent. Just at this moment, Yiqing Qian brought a large group of powerful cultivators back to Three Springs sect. On the same day, Three Springs sect announced the abolition of Yiqing Luo's young matriarch position. The reason was that sect master Yi Tianquang wasn't seriously ill at all. Rather, Yiqing Luo had poisoned Yi Tianquang in order to force him to abdicate. In order to hunt down Yiqing Luo, the deranged patricide traitor of the Three Springs sect, Yiqing Qian recommended the only male in Three Springs sect who was still in the residence, Yifengru, as the new patriarch of Three Springs sect. After Yifengru became the patriarch of Three Springs sect, he passed most of the authority of Three Springs sect to Yiqing Qian. Yiqing Qian then placed the batch of powerful cultivators she had brought along into every corner of the West Continent in batches. In a short span of 2 days, the Three Springs sect controlled the lifeline of the entire West Continent. Even the 4 great clans had been brutally murdered. If anyone dares to defy the Three Springs sect, on that day, the heads of the entire family would be hung on the city wall. In this way, the forces of the Western Continent who were unwilling to accept the outcome wouldn't dare to act rashly. After Yiqing Luo finished listening, the expression on her face gradually congealed. She knitted her brows and asked, Yifengru and Yiqing Qian have joined forces? Have you fought with the batch of cultivators that Yiqing Qian brought back? She knew that Yi Fengru was ambitious, but she had not expected Yi Fengru to choose to cooperate with Yi Qingqian. This was truly unfathomable. Moreover, Yi Qingqian, she was now a member of the Dark Coalition. The group of powerful, profound practitioners that he had brought with him was probably the group of people who had escaped from the dark forces. Yi Fengru should be very clear about Yi Qingqian's current power and the true identity of those cultivators. Now that the dark forces had been completely annihilated by the Imperial Palace, the remaining few wouldn't be able to cause much trouble. Yi Qingzhen really couldn't understand. How could someone as smart as Yi Fengru make such a choice? Moreover, he was willing to let go of the authority of Three Springs sect to Yi Qingqian? What was even more terrifying was, in just 2 short days, the entire Western continent was under their control. Yi Qingqian wanted to make use of Three Springs sect to let the dark forces return to Nirvana realm? The day it happened, Big Brother and I were chased out by Dad. Mu Zifei shook his head. Father knows that those people from the Three Springs sect won't let you off, so he specially had us 2 brothers stop you before you enter the city. After Mu Zifan bandaged Yi Fengyu's wound again, he sighed lightly. Yi Qingqian knows that you're definitely worried about Fengyu and has been searching for your whereabouts in the city for the past few days. Once you enter the city, Yi Qingluo pursed her lips, recalling when she was pulled away by Mu Zifan earlier. Falling onto herself that icy cold gaze, Yi Qingqian probably already knew that she had returned to the Western continent. Star. Chapter 1937. What happened to little Yu's injury? Yi Qingluo squinted her eyes and looked at Yi Fengyu. Yi Fengru? Yi Qingqian? On the stone bed, the young man who was wrapped in bandages trembled slightly. Ziling wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and said in a tearful voice, "It's little Big." She stopped and a trace of anger appeared in her eyes. "It's that bitch Yi Qingqian." Ziling. Yi Fengyu shouted in a hoarse voice. As if he wanted to stop Ziling, Ziling's lips moved. After receiving the look from Yi Qingluo, she continued. Yi Qingqian, that bitch. In order to force young master to submit, she forced him to write a letter to trick you back to Three Springs sect, so that she could catch you like a turtle in a jar. Young master naturally refused to listen, so that bitch directly crippled young master's right hand and right leg, and almost crippled young master's cultivation. Ziling's tone was full of hatred and anger. She clenched her fists and looked at the wounded Yi Fengyu on the stone bed, gritting her teeth even harder. Yi Qingluo's expression became more and more solemn. That pair of enchanting eyes seemed to be stained with a layer of coldness. When she helped Yi Fengyu earlier, Yi Qingluo had already taken the opportunity to feel his pulse. Yi Fengyu not only suffered from serious external injuries, but his internal injuries were also extremely serious. Without careful recuperation, she was afraid that Yi Fengyu would really be a cripple in this life. Moreover, the meridians of his hand and right leg were broken. Just how ruthless was he? Yi Qingluo could almost imagine how much torment and pain he had suffered at that time. Yi Qingqian. She did not look for her. How dare she take the initiative to stir up trouble? How did you escape? Yi Qingluo's gloomy voice was extremely strange. Her gaze swept over the Mu brothers. The 2 of them shook their heads and waved their hands. No, it wasn't us. We were about to sneak into the Three Springs sect through the back door to gather information for you when we were attacked by these 2 people. Yi Qingluo frowned. Someone rescued Yi Fengyu and Ziling and threw it to the Mu brothers who were about to sneak in? Linger didn't see that person's face clearly, but Linger knows that the person who saved Ling, and young master, is a man, and he's very strong. Even that bitch didn't have the chance to fight back in front of him. Ziling recalled the situation at that time and clenched her fists angrily. Linger thought that it was someone arranged by Mist to protect young master. If it wasn't for that person who saved young master would definitely be tortured to death by that bitch. Yi Qingluo's tightly clenched fist loosened slightly, then clenched it again. The process repeated more than 10 times. Only then did she suppress the anger in her heart. She slowly walked to the stone bed, and looked at the young man who was covered in wounds. Even though he was bandaged, he was still bleeding. She raised her hand and gently stroked his messy hair. "Little you, now that I'm back, leave the rest to me." "Sister." Yi Fengyu looked up anxiously. Yi Qing Luo's gaze made him swallow back the words he was about to say. Yi Qing Luo withdrew her hand and looked at him firmly. "Little you, now you are the only one who can shoulder the responsibility of the Yi family. Do you understand? Nothing must happen to you otherwise. Three Springs sect will really cease to exist." Yi Fengyu's face turned green. He blinked his eyes. His eyes were filled with panic and helplessness. "But sister, you are the..." Chapter 1938. Yi Fengyu's eyes became more and more flustered as he subconsciously moved back. It seemed like he didn't want Yi Qing Luo to touch his forehead. However, as soon as he moved, a burst of tearing pain came from his body. He hissed and sucked in a breath of cold air. The girl's cold fingertips had already fallen on his forehead. Yi Qing Luo's lips curved, revealing a smile. Her smile was filled with endless warmth. Yi Fengyu only felt a warm feeling, like spring water, spreading from his forehead and passing through his brain. Then his forehead was boiling hot. A few moments later, several patterns appeared on Yi Fengyu's forehead. The pattern was extremely light, very shallow, but it could be faintly seen that it was a cherry blossom pattern outlined by red flowing light. Yi Fengyu's eyes widened, staring at Yi Qing Luo in astonishment. Sister, why? How did Yi Qing Luo know that there was a cherry blossom pattern on his forehead? When this cherry blossom pattern appeared on Yi Fengyu's forehead, the people around them were all dumbfounded. They looked at the pattern on his forehead incredulously, although it was only a few shallow lines. But it was enough to clearly distinguish that it was a cherry blossom. Mu Zifan was the first to react. He quickly rushed to the stone bed, both hands on the stone bed, staring at the pattern on his forehead. This is the mark of the four major sects? Yi Qing Luo straightened up, her lips hooked up into a smile. Rumor has it that the four major sects are the guardians of the Divine Emperor's tomb, as well as the envoys to maintain peace and balance in the Nirvana realm. Every patriarch of the four major sects is personally selected by the Divine Emperor. In every generation, only one person can obtain the inheritance of the patriarch, which is this Divine Emperor mark. Yi Qing Luo's slender fingers pointed to his forehead. Fengyu is the real young patriarch of Three Springs sect. The Mu brothers were stunned. They had always thought that Yi Qing Luo was the real person who obtained the Divine Emperor mark. Otherwise, in the past 15 years, Yi Qing Luo was a waste without any cultivation ability. How could Yi Tianquang let her be the young patriarch of Three Springs sect for so many years? But the God Emperor mark appeared on Yi Fengyu's body. That also meant that the real young sect master was actually Yi Fengyu. Every generation of the four major sects only had one sect master to inherit the legacy. It's not like this now. Sister Yi Fengyu couldn't understand why Yi Qing Luo would reveal the God Emperor's mark on his forehead. Moreover, Yi Qing Luo's forehead also had this mark. It was when he fought with the Corpse King in the tomb of the Ling King. He saw that cherry blossom pattern on Yi Qing Luo's forehead. Moreover, that pattern, that mark, compared to the mark on his forehead, it was thousands of times more obvious. Yi Qing Luo was the one who truly possessed the God Emperor's imprint. Big sister knows that you've always kept this secret, and gave the position of young sect master to big sister, in order to protect her. Yi Qing Luo had already interrupted Yi Fengyu's words with a smile. Yi Fengyu stared at Yi Qing Luo in a daze. A strange emotion was gradually surging in his heart. Yi Qing Luo didn't give him a chance to think deeply. Under the bright candlelight, Yi Qing Luo's smile was clean and pure. But in the next moment, her hand was already lightly placed on his shoulder. Her strength was very light and didn't touch his wound. However, Yi Fengyu could feel a heavy pressure on his shoulders. He wanted to speak. Chapter 1939. So Xiaoyu, what you need to do now is to cooperate with Zifan's treatment. Yi Qing Luo's expression was solemn. In a few days, Master Ghost Doctor will be back. By then, I will plead for Master Ghost Doctor to treat you. Mu Zifan's eyes lit up. You mean Ghost Hand Doctor? Yes. Yi Qing Luo nodded. With Master Ghost Doctor around, Xiaoyu has an 80% chance of recovering. But the prerequisite is, Xiaoyu, you must cooperate. Yi Fengyu was still in a state of shock. Yi Qing Luo's hand had already moved away from his shoulder. If you want to protect me, if you want to give me a family that I can rely on, then promise me that after you cooperate with my treatment, you'll help me take back Three Springs Sect. You'll make Three Springs Sect flourish and become my strongest backer. Following Yi Qing Luo's firm and encouraging voice, Yi Fengyu's gaze gradually became firm. He looked at Yi Qing Luo. In his heart, a flame was burning. Although the flame was small, but it had the power to start a prairie fire. I promise you, I want to become my most solid fortress. I will protect my sister and not let anyone bully her. The young man's sonorous voice revealed his conviction. Yi Qing Luo smiled as she patted his head, her eyes filled with warmth. Amen, I believe you. After comforting Yi Fengyu, watching the young man relax his willpower, and slowly fell into a deep sleep, Yi Qing Luo then left the stone bed. She had just taken a few steps when her body was enveloped by a wave of warmth. The man's strong arm carried her up by the waist. You need to rest too. Dmo Xian's low and hoarse voice was filled with anger. Ever since she found out that Three Springs Sect was in trouble, Yi Qing Luo had been worried about Yi Fengyu and Ziling, and hadn't been able to close her eyes for the past few days. Even if she occasionally took a nap in his arms, she would wake up in less than an hour. Now that she was sure that Yi Fengyu was still alive, she should take a break. I want to make a trip to Three Springs Sect. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips, clenching her fists. No way. This time, Dmo Xian didn't listen to Yi Qing Luo's words, forcefully rejecting her request. I have already allowed you to be willful for 3 days. Three Springs Sect's matters can be settled anytime, now rest. It was an irresistible voice, and one could hear the anger in it. Obviously, this was Dmo Xian's bottom line. Yi Qing Luo opened her mouth, knowing full well that Dmo Xian was worried about her health, and was unable to refute his concern. Tong Ziqing tried to smooth things over. That's right, Qing Luo. What the overlord said is right. We've been on the road for 3 consecutive days, and even if you're not tired, we're all tired. Let's take a rest here first. You have a mortal body. Even if your body is made of iron, it won't be able to withstand your torment. Long Yunjian said lightly. Mo Ying was like a puppet. She nodded stiffly and said in a stiff voice, Even I feel tired. If you don't want me to use other methods to make you sleep, then obediently close your eyes. The deep and pleasant voice seemed to be hypnotizing as it floated in her ears. Yi Qing Luo stared resentfully at Dmo Xian's magnificent face. In the end, she still succumbed to his despotic power. Alright, she was indeed very tired. Moreover, Long Yunjian and the others were also tired. Whether she wanted to or not, the final result would probably be, she rested in Dmo Xian's arms. Forget it. Rather than letting Dmo Xian use extreme methods to force her to sleep, she might as well take the initiative to rest. Perhaps it was because the arm which was hugging her was too safe. Or perhaps it was because his elegant sandalwood scent was too reassuring. But after closing her eyes for a moment, she fell into a deep sleep. Star. Chapter 1940. Yi Qing Luo's sleep had lasted for an entire day. Perhaps it was because the tension in her emotions these few days had been relaxed in this instance. Or perhaps it was because of Dmo Xian's warm and reassuring aura, which lingered around her nose. After Yi Qing Luo woke up, she felt that her entire body was extremely relaxed. There was no trace of the laziness and softness from sleeping for an entire day and night. She was suspicious. Did she undergo a profound energy baptism while she was sleeping? The moment she moved, the man who was hugging her also woke up in shock. He slowly opened his shimmering peach blossom eyes, as his dense long lashes moved lazily and seductively. His eyes, which had just woken up, were filled with a hazy mist. Even though she was used to seeing Dmo Xian's peerless elegance, at this moment, Yi Qing Luo's heart was like thunder. She gazed at Dmo Xian's face in a daze, as though she was in a daze. Sensing the young lady's gaze, Dmo Xian's lips curled slightly as he laughed lightly. Are you satisfied with this husband's face? Yiqing Luo's cheeks instantly flushed red. She speedily shifted her gaze away. Husband. These two words fell into Yiqing Luo's ears, as though it was teasing her about something. Dmo Xian gave a low laugh. His chest vibrated, rising and falling. His brows were filled with a teasing smile. Yiqing Luo's face turned even redder from his laughter. Uffed. An unbearable laughter was heard from the side. Yiqing Luo immediately stared angrily. She saw Tong Ziqing covering her mouth, but her curved eyes were unable to conceal the smile. Seeing Yiqing Luo looking at her, Tong Ziqing was helpless as she put down her hand which was covering her mouth, but her eyes were still filled with laughter. Sorry Qing Luo. I wanted to hold it in. But seeing you behaving like a little wife in front of the overlord, I just couldn't hold it in, ha ha ha. Tong Ziqing couldn't help but laughed out loud. Laughing till the end, she knew that even if she stopped, Yiqing Luo would absolutely not let her off easily. She might as well hold her stomach and laugh out loud. The corners of Long Yunzhan and the others' mouths also curled up into an extremely shallow arc. Yiqing Luo smashed her head hard into Dmo Xian's arms. Damn! She had forgotten that Long Yunzhan and the rest were still watching from the side. Could it be that the scene of her staring at Dmo Xian's face in a daze had been seen by them? Her image! Her image! Jokes aside, after the atmosphere became lively, the Imperial Palace's disciple whom Dmo Xian had arranged in advance brought the news. Just as they rested in the secret passage for a day and a night, another earth-shattering change occurred in Three Springs City. It wasn't until this afternoon that the matter had completely fermented. The situation had already developed into a serious trend. Speaking of this, it had to start from yesterday, when Yiqing Luo and the others were outside the city gates. It was indeed like what Yiqing Luo had guessed. Yiqing Qian already knew about Yiqing Luo's return to the West Continent, because outside the city gate, he had only caught a glimpse of red dress. Yiqing Qian was almost certain that Hong Yi was Yiqing Luo. Hence, Yiqing Qian summoned those guards from Three Springs sect to search for Yiqing Luo's whereabouts in the entire city. This search lasted for an entire day. By the afternoon of the second day, Yiqing Qian lost her patience. Yiqing Qian knew that if Yiqing Luo intentionally hid, even if she dug 3 feet into the ground, she might not be able to find any traces of Yiqing Luo. Hence, Yiqing Qian used an extreme method to force Yiqing Luo to appear on her own accord. The current Yiqing Qian in Three Springs City, or even in the West Continent, could be said to be able to cover the sky with one hand. Even if it was the royal family, they were unable to do anything to her. Star. Chapter 1941. Not to mention the 4 great families, especially the Mu family. Yiqing Qian led the guards from Three Springs sect, and those powerful cultivators, who were the remnants of the dark forces, to surround the Mu family and kidnap the entire Mu family, forcefully bringing them to the West Lawn Square. And she had already spread the news to the entire West Lawn Island. If they didn't see Yiqing Luo and the rest appearing tonight, Yiqing Qian would directly dismember the entire Mu family at the West Lawn Square. Not only would the Mu family be unable to keep their corpses intact, she would also slice the Mu family into minced meat in front of the commoners. After these words were spread, the commoners were horrified. Some of them kept berating Yiqing Luo. They were certain that if it wasn't for the enmity between Yiqing Qian and Yiqing Luo, why would Yiqing Qian take revenge on the West Lawn continent? How could the entire West Lawn continent be controlled by a bunch of third-rate 9 sects? Especially now that they saw the Mu family who had always been helping the people, because of Yiqing Luo being held up at the West Lawn Square, about to be humiliated by that vicious woman. The commoners' dissatisfaction towards Yiqing Luo, towards Three Springs sect, started to grow and spread in their hearts. They who were in deep trouble. They had all forgotten that before this happened, they were still saying that they were proud of Yiqing Luo. Of course, this wasn't the end. The situation was still fermenting. Just 6 hours after Yi Qingqian kidnapped the entire Mu family. She gathered those remnants of the dark forces, guarding the surroundings of Three Springs City. Once the Mu family was dismembered, they started to kill the commoners from house to house. In a quarter of an hour, one family was massacred, until the traitor of Three Springs sect, Yi Qingluo, appeared. The moment this news came out, not only were the guards from Three Springs sect searching for Yi Qingluo's whereabouts, even those commoners joined in the search. None of them wanted to die. None of them wanted to die for an insignificant person. As long as they found Yi Qingluo and handed her over, none of them would have to die. As a result, the entire Western continent was plunged into chaos. The few people in the secret room heard that, and their expressions turned gloomy. Yi Qingluo narrowed her eyes as she sneered sinisterly. She's gone out all of a sudden, not even wanting her own reputation. In the past, what Yi Qingjian cared about the most was her reputation. She painstakingly put on a gentle and virtuous mask, and was called the #1 beauty. But now she was infamous, so she didn't care. It could be seen that after the repeated exchanges with Yi Qingluo, the baptism of defeat, it had already made Yi Qingqian's heart extremely firm. Despicable and shameless. How dare she be so cruel? Who did she, Yi Qingqian, think she could control the West Continent? How could the other 3 mainlands possibly give her this opportunity? Mu Zifei was endlessly furious. He clenched his fists tightly, and his eyes were scarlet red. Tong Ziqing's icy cold eyes were filled with murderous intent. That damned Yi Qingqian. If I don't beat her till she begs for mercy, my surname is not Tong. It was too cruel, too despicable. He completely viewed human lives as worthless, even using the Mu family's people to force Yi Qingluo to appear. Qingluo. Mu Zifan, who had been silent, suddenly opened his mouth. That usually gentle face was solemn at this moment. He clenched his fists tightly as a trace of struggle flashed past his face. She openly lured you to the West Lawn Square. There must be a trap. You can't. Chapter 1942. Qingluo. Mu Zifan's complexion darkened. If you go, you'll be throwing your life away. Zifan, I know you care about me. Yi Qingluo's expression was very calm, without a trace of panic. It was as if he didn't know what kind of danger he would encounter once he went to the West Billow Square. She raised her charming eyes, and a warm smile appeared on her face. You treat me as your brother, and I also treat you as my brother. If I sacrifice the Mu family for my survival, how can I live peacefully? Although she had never seen anyone from the Mu family, but from the Mu brothers, she could clearly tell what kind of people the 2 elders of the Mu family were. Moreover, he was able to maintain his monogamous character in this era, where concubines were common. It was enough to prove that the character and quality of the Mu family were extremely high. Otherwise, the 2 elders of the Mu family wouldn't have kicked the Mu brothers out of the Mu family on the day when the Three Springs sect was in trouble, and asked them to specially stop her outside the city gate to tell her about the recent events in the West Continent. More importantly, they were relatives of the Mu brothers. How could Yi Qingluo possibly sit back and do nothing for her own safety? Qingluo. Mu Zifan's throat was dry. All right, let's not talk about anything else. With a Xian by my side, even 100 Yi Qingqian can't do anything to me. Yi Qingluo was just about to raise her hand and pat Mu Zifan's shoulder. But her hand hadn't even touched Mu Zifan. His body was suddenly pulled back by someone. Yi Qingluo fell into the man's arms. She turned around, put her hands around his waist, and said with a smile, My protector, my thigh, are you jealous? Dmo Xian narrowed his long and narrow peach blossom eyes. His thin lips were tinged with a smile, but inexplicably revealed a trace of chilliness. His gaze seemed to be asking, What do you think? Yi Qingluo shuddered and stuffed her head into his arms. With such a thick thigh here, she decided to hug him tightly. No matter what tricks Yi Qingjian wanted to play, she was fearless. This was what it felt like to ride on someone's coattails, to have a patron, and to have a backer. Not satisfied? If you're not convinced, then find someone more powerful than His Majesty the Overlord to fight. Yiqing Luo would choose to go to the West Lawn Public Square. This was within everyone's expectations. No one spoke up to stop them. There were still 6 hours until the Ion Hour. Yiqing Luo took a look at Long Yunjian and the others as she pondered deeply for a moment. The few of us will go to the West Continent Public Square and save the Mu family's 2 elders, you all. She glanced at the Mu brothers. Presumably, the South Continent already knows about what happened in the West Continent. Zifei, find a way to contact the spies in the South Continent and send a letter to the headmaster of the headquarters. As long as he is willing to help me protect the Three Springs sect, we can still discuss the deal we discussed before. Mu Zifei memorized Yiqing Luo's words and nodded vigorously. Yiqing Luo's gaze shifted. Zifan, I'm afraid we need the Alchemist Guild to take action. The entire West Continent was already under Yiqing Qian's control. In reality, it was in the hands of the remnants of the Dark Forces. The surviving members of the Dark Forces were cruel and bloody. If he were to forcefully use the power of the Imperial Palace to suppress the remnants of the Dark Forces, it would be impossible for him to survive. He was afraid that they would retaliate. Moreover, there was a possibility of inconveniencing DMO Xian. Yiqing Luo could roughly guess it. DMO Xian was an existence outside of Nirvana realms. Every plane had its own rules of survival. If other planes or the messengers wandering around the planes discovered DMO Xian, who knows, they might even bring DMO Xian back to his plane. She couldn't keep using the power of the Imperial Palace. Star. Chapter 1943. The Mu brothers nodded their heads vigorously as they responded. Following that, the 2 of them received their mission and left the secret room. Yiqing Luo's vision swept onto Long Yunjian and the others. She squinted her eyes slightly as she spoke calmly. You 2 go into the vicinity of the West Square first and investigate what kind of trap Yiqing Qian has set for me. Saying that, Yiqing Luo slowly walked towards Long Yunjian. She raised her hand and her slender fingers brushed past Long Yunjian's eyes. Long Yunjian was slightly stunned as he looked at the fingers brushing past his eyes. But he didn't resist at all. Even his eyelids didn't blink at all. Immediately after, Long Yunjian felt his pupils turning icy cold, as though something had entered his eyes. He moved a little, but there wasn't any abnormality. Just as he was about to ask Yiqing Luo what she meant by this. But he saw Tong Ziqing staring at him in a daze. Class monitor, your eyes. Eyes. Tong Ziqing's fingers trembled as she stared at Long Yunjian's eyes, as though she had suffered a shock. Long Yunjian raised his hand and wanted to touch his eyes but was stopped by Yiqing Luo. Don't move, this is to help you hide your azure blue eyes. This was something which she specially made for Long Yunjian, similar to the modern era's cosmetic contact lenses. In the 21st century, Yiqing Luo had this idea. She also used practical actions. After all, Long Yunjian's eyes were indeed too conspicuous in Nirvana realm. No matter where he went, he would probably be recognized. Originally, she wanted to give it to Long Yunjian as a gift. She had not expected it to be put to use now. Long Yunjian now had a pair of brownish-black pupils, which was no different from normal people. After getting used to Long Yunjian's blue eyes, to see this normal color again, Tong Ziqing couldn't help but be shocked. She was also shocked at what Yiqing Luo had done to be able to change a person's pupil color. The few of them had changed their appearances and were dressed in extremely ordinary clothes. Adding on to the fact that Long Yunjian's unique eyes were concealed, Yiqing Qian and the Dark Forces remnants would absolutely not be able to discover them. Then sister, what does Kitty want to do? Kitty Lee tilted her head as her bright eyes blinked. Yiqing Luo rubbed her swaying black cat ears. You and Lulu stay here to take care of Xiaoyu. Lulu is in charge of changing Xiaoyu's dressing, while you are responsible for their safety. Leaving Kitty Lee here. Actually, she had her own selfish motives. The relationship between Kitty Lee and that devil-like instructor Zhou Mo was obviously ambiguous. If this matter were to spread to the South Below continent, Zhou Mo and Gui Wu should also receive this news. Zhou Mo was worried about Kitty Lee, so he would definitely follow Kitty Lee's scent. This would ensure Yi Fingyu's safety. The bigger reason was that Kitty Lee had already signed a blood contract with her. She now possessed more than half of the Beastman's power. The battle between her and the King of Darkness, affecting two sacred beasts, affecting Shiju, naturally also affecting Kitty Lee, who had signed a contract with her. If Kitty Lee could use this to advance, it would naturally be the best thing. If he failed to advance, staying here would also ensure Kitty Lee's safety. Yiqing Luo rubbed Kitty Lee's head once again as she reminded her softly, "Sister, then you. Where are you going?" Kitty Lee's black cat ears moved, asking Long Yunjian and the others to go to the West Billow Square to scout for news. Didn't that mean that Yiqing Luo wasn't intending to go to the West Billow Square now? Chapter 1944. Dmo Xian's thin lips rose slightly. Between his brows, there was a glint as it shone brilliantly. That magnificent aura made one's heart fluttered. "Enough, Thai. If you continue to tease me, I won't be able to control myself." Yiqing Luo stared at him resentfully. This man, why was he releasing male hormones all the time? She was almost smelled by this scent, and her amorous heart started to sway. Dmo Xian shook his head helplessly. This lass, previously she called him her guardian angel. Now she even gave him a new nickname, What Thai. He didn't know why her brain was filled with so many strange things. Dmo Xian held her arm tightly, fixing her petite body in his embrace. His loose black hair brushed against her face. "I'll make a trip back to the Imperial Palace first." Dmo Xian heard that Yiqing Luo wanted to go somewhere, and had already guessed her plan. Now Yiqing Qian's thoughts were all placed on the Westlake Square, whereas the place Yiqing Luo wanted to go. He was very confident in his own woman. That place couldn't trap Yiqing Luo at all. "Ah Xian." Yiqing Luo frowned as she grabbed Dmo Xian's arm. "This matter, we don't need the Imperial Palace. I promise you, unless it's a critical juncture, the Imperial Palace will not make a move." Dmo Xian rubbed her head as he said warmly, "I just want to ensure that nothing goes wrong with you." Yiqing Luo pursed her lips. "Don't worry, this matter concerns the dark forces. Even if I make a move, it's a matter of course, and I won't receive any punishment." Dmo Xian saw the worry in Yiqing Luo's eyes as he lowered his head and kissed her lips. "I'm more unwilling than anyone else to leave you." It was just a light sentence. It soothed the restlessness in Yiqing Luo's heart. The man's elegant sandalwood scent seeped into her heart bit by bit. The two's warm and sweet atmosphere. Even though the surrounding people had seen it many times, they still couldn't resist being stuffed with dog food. After they had allocated their respective tasks, the few of them quietly left the secret tunnel. Before Dmo Xian left, he called Tang Beiyuan out. This was the secret guard who replaced Wen to protect Yiqing Luo in the dark. A figure like a ghost quickly moved on the dazzling golden city wall. The guards came and went, but none of them had detected any trace of Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as she followed the map in her memory and landed stably on the roof of the Crown Prince Palace. Her footsteps were light and did not make any sound. Yiqing Luo released her perception as her vision swept across the surroundings. After confirming that there were only two remnants of the dark forces guarding the Crown Prince Palace, one at the front and one at the back. Relieved, she leaped into the Crown Prince's palace. He was right. Before going to West Lawn Square, she wanted to go to the Imperial Palace. The Crown Prince Palace was completely silent. It was so quiet that it didn't feel like the Crown Prince Palace at all. The faces of the maids and manservants that came and went were tense, and they were extremely careful. They were deeply afraid that they would offend any lord and end up with their heads separated from their bodies. Yiqing Luo followed her memory and found the Crown Prince's bedroom. She stretched her body, and her soft body bent into an arc that ordinary people couldn't do. He slid in through the window. There was not a single sound of breathing in such a huge chamber. It was so quiet that it didn't seem like the place where the Crown Prince stayed. Yiqing Luo walked into the inner hall of the bedroom. The entire room was filled with the stench of alcohol. Yiqing Luo walked closer. He saw a tall figure sitting beside a mahogany table. On the table, There were a total of 8 wine jugs lying crookedly. There were also a few wine cups lying crookedly on the table. This showed how dispirited this person was. He was so drunk that he seemed to have lost his senses. He didn't even notice Yi Qing Luo's approaching footsteps. Star. Chapter 1945. Crown Prince really can't take the blow. It's just a small setback, and you've already turned yourself into such a dispirited look. Those who don't know would have thought that Crown Prince had already been crippled. The young lady's voice was crisp and melodious, as though she was drinking from an icy spring. However, her tone was filled with disdain and arrogance. Who? The drunk man banged on the table as he staggered as he stood up. He squinted his eyes, as though he couldn't see the person in front of him clearly. His entire body reeked of alcohol, causing the entire luxurious bedroom to be filled with the smell of alcohol. TSK. Yi Qing Luo crossed her arms in front of her chest as her slender brows rose slightly, her eyes filled with a sneer of ridicule. Looks like I've wasted my time coming here today. Saying that, she turned around. Her flame-like skirt swept out in an arc that resembled a blazing sunset glow. The man stared at that arc. His pupils suddenly contracted as he staggered forward and chased after her for a few steps. With a putong sound, he fell heavily onto the ground. The man's dragon totem, which was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, seemed to have lost its ferocity at this instance. Yi Qing Luo's footsteps took a slight pause. She slowly turned around as she looked at the disheveled man who had fallen onto the ground. Lung Fengying, what else do you want to say? The man in front of her was the former second prince, the current crown prince, Lung Fengying. That handsome and delicate-looking, seemingly harmless face had long been covered with dejection and vicissitudes of life. Lung Fengying struggled, trying to climb up from the ground. But after he was drunk, he couldn't muster up any strength. He felt as though he was stepping on cotton, but his consciousness was telling him very clearly he absolutely could not let the young lady in front of him leave. This young lady was his god. Lung Fengying was so drunk that he couldn't see who the person was. There was only a strong sense of familiarity, and that feeling which made him inexplicably fearful, controlling him to ask Yi Qing Luo to stay. Don't go. Don't go. Lung Fengying mumbled in fear as he raised his hand up high, as he grabbed towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. But he couldn't grab anything at all. Save me, I beg you. The current Lung Fengying, where had the previous gentleness, high spirits, or the royal family's nobility? He was dejected, as if he had found a life-saving straw. He only wanted to hold on tightly and beg her to save him from this deep and fiery quagmire. Yi Qing Luo looked at him coldly. There was not the slightest emotion in his eyes. In her memory, in terms of appearance, Lung Fengying might not be able to match up to Lung Fenghua. However, his explosive aura, as well as his own ability and intelligence, all surpassed Lung Fenghua's. But he didn't expect the current Lung Fengying. His endurance was actually so poor. If it wasn't for the sake of the Mu family, she really didn't want to have anything to do with this Lung Fengying. She scoffed lightly as she slowly walked towards Lung Fengying. Her slender fingers pinched a pill. With a flick of his finger, the pill drew a beautiful arc in the air. That pill landed steadily into Lung Fengying's mouth. He looked up at her blankly. When the pill entered his mouth, an extremely bitter and spicy taste filled his mouth. Lung Fengying only felt a splitting headache. He held his head and beat it fiercely. From the beginning to the end, Yi Qing Luo had her arms crossed over her chest as she watched coldly from the sidelines. Approximately half the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Lung Fengying slowly stopped his painful howls. He fell onto the ground as he hugged his head and twisted body, slowly relaxing by quite a bit. He panted heavily as he held his head, as he slowly raised his head. What entered his eyes was a young lady dressed in red. Her flames were like fire, as though she was a fairy from the ninth heavens. Chapter 1946. The young lady in front of him, and the figure in his memories slowly overlapped. Lung Fengying's pupils contracted as the hand which was supporting his head stiffened. His thin lips trembled as his hoarse voice suddenly rang. Yi. Yi Qing Luo, it's you, it's you. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled up in ridicule. Sober up? He was stunned as he smelled the thick alcohol stench on him, as a sliver of embarrassment surfaced on his face. He frantically climbed up from the ground as he patted his wrinkled robes. He recalled. Not long ago, Yi Qingqian used a forceful attitude to ask for the West Continent's tiger talisman from his hands. And she used such humiliating words to humiliate him. Humiliate him. But there was nothing he could do. As a crown prince, there was nothing he could do. He didn't even have the right to walk out of this luxurious palace. He only wanted to use wine to numb himself. Only when he was drunk, so drunk that he had no consciousness. So that he wouldn't recall his useless side. After that. Then he seemed to have seen a fairy. The fairy gave him a pill and he. Lung Fengying suddenly regained his senses. Earlier what you fed me was a sobering pill. Otherwise what did you think it was? Yi Qing Luo's brows rose. Poison? You don't have the right to poison me now. Lung Fengying pursed his lips as his eyes shot out anger, but he clenched his fists tightly as he suppressed it deep down in his heart. Yes, based on Yi Qing Luo's current status. If she wanted to kill him, it would just be a matter of minutes. You're looking for me because you want me to do something for you? Lung Fengying didn't beat around the bush. He was very curious. Now that the entire West Continent was already in Yi Qingqian's hands, what other ways did Yi Qing Luo have to reverse this ending? Yi Qing Luo's lips curled as her eyes smiled calmly. Not for me but for yourself. Lung Fengying's expression turned cold. Yi Qing Luo continued to smile. Don't tell me you're willing to let that woman who almost became your wife control your life and death? Are you really willing to hand over the West Continent's imperial court? She paused for a moment as her smile became even more ostentatious. Lung Fengying, your ambition will not allow you to be willing. As though what he was thinking in his heart was poked. Lung Fengying's fists were clenched tightly. His body was taut, and his muscles were clearly defined. Yi Qing Luo saw his most direct reaction change, and her brows rose frivolously as she asked, How is it, do you need my help? The corners of Tang Beiyuan's mouth twitched. As expected of the future mistress of their imperial palace, he really wasn't willing to suffer any losses. She took the initiative to look for Lung Fengying. No matter what, Lung Fengying should be the one to help her with this matter. In this way, after the matter was settled, Yi Qing Luo would owe Lung Fengying a favor. But under Yi Qing Luo's few words, hence it became Lung Fengying who needed Yi Qing Luo's help. The person who owed him a favor had evolved into Lung Fengying. The future mistress and Di Zun were a perfect match. Not only was Tang Beiyuan's lips twitching, even Lung Fengying's gaze towards Yi Qing Luo was filled with speechlessness. Perhaps he already knew Yi Qing Luo's character. Lung Fengying didn't want to argue with Yi Qing Luo over this meaningless favor. What do you want me to do? The expression on his face was no longer as dejected as before. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were filled with admiration. This Lung Fengying was indeed much smarter than Lung Fenghua. If it was Lung Fenghua, he would probably blame today's downfall on her. For example, it was because of her that he gave up on Yi Qingqian, causing Yi Qingqian to come back for revenge. However, Lung Fengying quickly adjusted his mentality. He also quickly understood which choice he should make was the most correct choice. Star. Chapter 1947. This Lung Fengying was indeed more suitable for the position of monarch than Lung Fenghua. She curled her lips into a sweet smile. If you still have the will to fight, it means that you can still be saved. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were long and narrow as she smiled bewitchingly. I need your identity as the crown prince. A malicious glint flashed past Lung Fengying's gentle brows. He raised his head, his eyes flashing. All right, as long as you can help me take back the empire of the West Continent, I will do my best to satisfy your request. The horizon was pitch black. The atmosphere was gloomy and eerie. West Billow Square. Thousands of commoners were gathered in a circle. There were 3 inner layers and 3 outer layers, surrounding the West Billow Square. The faces of the commoners were filled with solemnity and suppressed anger. However, they could only stand where they were, unable to act rashly. Most of these commoners were unwilling to stand here, and he was forced by Yi Qingqian to stand here and wait till midnight to start the massacre. Only a small part of the people are here, because those who are tied to the altar in the square are the young and old of the Mu family. The Mu family had always practiced medicine to help the people, so they would not charge fees randomly. What's more, if they encountered a poor family, they would even receive free medical treatment. Most of the people in Shilon Square have been treated by the Mu family. Right now, the entire Mu family, old and young, was tied to the sacrificial altar. Once the midnight hour passed, they would slaughter the entire family. The commoners' hearts were filled with rage towards Yi Qingqian and the others' cruelty. But what he hated the most was that Yi Qingluo, who had yet to appear. Yi Qingqian sat majestically by the side of the altar, lying on the luxurious and comfortable recliner. Her posture was elegant, and she didn't care about how the people around her looked at her. Yi Qingqian felt that she was extremely foolish in the past. For the sake of a false reputation, she pretended to be a gentle, virtuous, elegant, and generous young lady. They lived such a tiring life, but in the end, they still couldn't get anything good. It would be better to be like this, below one person above tens of thousands. She could do whatever she wanted to do without any scruples. Anyway, she had her own backer. She had nothing to fear. This was a place where the strong were respected and strength was supreme. She just needed to be strong. Look now how colorful her life was. Everyone was afraid of her, She could summon clouds and rain with a flip of her hand. She could control the royal family if she wanted to. If he wanted to destroy the Three Springs sect, he could destroy the Three Springs sect. The entire Western continent was already under her control. This was the life Yi Qingqian wanted. This was the life that Yi Qingqian had always been yearning for. As long as Yi Qingluo was destroyed, destroy that Yi Qingluo, who had ruined her life right from the start. Her life would truly be complete. What time is it? Yi Qingqian raised her gorgeous brows and asked coldly. They had been sitting in the West Square for an entire afternoon, and Yi Qingluo's shadow was nowhere to be seen. Yi Qingqian was getting impatient. The maidservant who stood respectfully at the side answered timidly, replying to eldest miss, "It's already 9 in the evening." "Hi, sure." Yi Qingqian squinted her gorgeous eyes and muttered softly, "It's almost midnight. Does that slut Yi Qingluo not intend to appear?" She stood up slowly. Her blue flowery skirt shone with a dazzling brilliance. Her movements were like flowing water. It made Yi Qingqian look even more alluring, even though everyone was extremely resentful towards this vicious woman. But they had no choice but to admit it. Yi Qingqian, the former #1 beauty in Three Springs sect, really lived up to her reputation. That temperament, that looks. She was really unparalleled in beauty. Star. Chapter 1948. Heiji. Yi Qingqian called out coldly and arrogantly. Heiji walked out from the side of the chair and bowed respectfully as she looked at Yi Qingqian. Heiji was the maid that the Wolf Saint Dharma had arranged to serve Yi Qingqian after she entered the dark forces. "Let the night watch. The entire Three Springs city will sound the gongs. We must force Yi Qingluo out." Yi Qingqian's lips were smiling, but it seemed extremely cold. She had a delicate face and a captivating gaze. Heiji's heart couldn't help but be tempted by Yi Qingqian's looks. She had been following Yi Qingqian and knew her changes better than anyone else. She looked at Yi Qingqian, from the original gentle and lovely person, slowly following the Wolf Saint Dharma's request, completely transforming herself into, just like her name in the dark forces, Fox Protector, a seductive and alluring demon fox. The current Yi Qingqian was indeed a vixen. Yi Qingqian's backing was the Wolf Saint Dharma. She relied on the Wolf Saint Dharma to survive. And because of this, bit by bit, she transformed herself into the image that the Wolf Saint Dharma liked. Although Yi Qingqian had long given up her ego for power, Heiji had to admit, this Yi Qingqian was even more dazzling than the previous Yi Qingqian. Hearing Yi Qingqian's command, Heiji nodded obediently as she bowed and retreated from the altar. Not long later, The surroundings were filled with extremely loud gongs. There were almost 20 over gongs. They were forced by the group of forces controlled by Yi Qingqian to scurry around the city. The gongs in her hands were banging loudly. Shouts were heard one after another. 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock. It's almost midnight. Midnight has arrived. Listening to the incessant sounds of the night watch, Mu family's patriarch Mu Zhao revealed a sullen expression as he stared at the demon fox lady and gritted his teeth. Yi Qingqian, do you know that the dark forces had long been annihilated by the imperial palace, and had long become the remnants of Nirvana realm and various continents? How dare you collude with the dark forces? Others couldn't tell where this bunch of powerful cultivators came from. Mu Lai was very clear about this. His two sons were extremely attentive towards the previous young matriarch of Three Springs sect. As a result, every day when they were eating, they would hear about Yi Qing Luo's matters. With regards to those shocking things that Yi Qing Luo had done before, Mu Lai knew everything clearly. Naturally, they understood that the power which Yi Qingqian relied on was the dark forces. Mu Lai was extremely disdainful of this. Huh? Yi Qingqian proudly raised her eyebrows as she walked towards Mu Lai. Pursue and kill? Surviving members? But Patriarch Mu, this young miss has been in control of the Western continent for a full 3 days. I have tied you, a kind person who is like a bodhisattva, to the altar for several hours. Why haven't the people of the other continents appeared? She covered her mouth and laughed scornfully. How could those cowardly people sacrifice their own strength for someone else's territory? Patriarch Mu, just give up. Traitor! You traitor of the West Continent! Mu Xiao, the old master of the Mu family, was so angry that his white beard flew up. The Mu family had always been loyal. They had never met such a shameless person. Most of the people present knew about Yi Qingqian's identity. He was a fickle and evil person with a vicious heart. Back then, the Three Springs sect spared her life for the sake of her family. But they had not expected Yi Qingqian to take revenge on them. No one would think that Yi Qingqian's revenge was right. Star. Chapter 1949. Back then, Yi Qingqian's actions, even if it took her life, it was a matter of course. Yi Qingqian would be kicked out of Three Springs sect. She had reaped the consequences of her own actions, and could not blame anyone else. Grandpa Mu, I advise you to save your strength. Yi Qingqian's lips curled into an arrogant smile as she raised her brows towards Mu Xiao. Why don't you plead in your heart that the little slut whom you're protecting wholeheartedly will appear at midnight? After a pause, she clicked her tongue and said, however, that little bitch is very hard-hearted. For someone like you who has no interaction with her at all, I don't think she would come to her death just for you. Saying that, Yi Qingqian sighed regretfully. Actually, I don't want to treat you like this. After all, we dark forces need Mu family's medical skills. What a pity. My target was originally the Yi clan's 8th young master, and that slut's servant girl, who asked your Mu clan's 2 young masters to take my target away. Yi Qingqian's motive was extremely simple. Not only did she want to brainwash everyone in the Mu family, but she also wanted to brainwash the people who were watching. Everything was because of Yi Qing Luo. From the start till the end, her gaze was only on Yi Qing Luo. The fact that they would capture the Mu family was only because they were forced into a corner. She wanted to stir up everyone's disgust and hatred towards Yi Qing Luo. However, Yi Qingqian's plan was destined to fail. Yi Qingqian, do you think everyone is as cold-blooded and heartless as you? My 2 sons are doing well. It was right to save them. Our Mu family is dead. I have a clear conscience. The one who spoke was the mother of the Mu brothers, Mu Lai's only wife, Shui Feishue. Her words were immediately echoed by everyone in the Mu family. Death was inevitable in one's life. They were not afraid of death. On the contrary, they felt that the young master of the Yi family had made the right choice. And when it was midnight, Yi Qing Luo didn't rush to the West Lawn Public Square to take the risk, which was the right choice. If they came, they would really be sending themselves to their deaths. In the end, not only Yi Qing Luo died, their Mu family would not be able to escape this calamity either. It would be better to sacrifice the Mu family now, in exchange for a chance for those young people to survive. Presumably, the affectionate and righteous woman mentioned by the two boys would treat the two boys well on account of the Mu family's sacrifice today. He looked at the Mu family with a fearless expression. Yi Qingqian's smile froze on her lips. Soon after, his expression gradually became somewhat distorted. On what basis? No matter where Yi Qingluo went, there would be people who would die for her wholeheartedly. It was obvious that the entire Mu family and Yi Qingluo had no interaction at all. As for her, even if she resorted to unscrupulous means, she would not be able to obtain the sincerity that belonged to her. Whether it was in the past or now, she had never had any sincerity. On the surface, the wolf saint technique looked like he doted on her, loved her, and doted on her. But Yi Qingqian herself was very clear. The holy wolf did not love her sincerely at all. She didn't know why the wolf saint technique would treat her so well. So much so that just by looking at her, he would be moved. But Yi Qingqian could feel it. The holy wolf technique's heart was not with her. Yi Qingqian laughed softly. There was a tinge of bitterness in her laughter. You're really the kindest person in the Westlawn continent. This miss would like to see how hard you can be for that slut. As though it was to vent the bitterness in her heart. Chapter 1950. Yi Qingqian. Mu Lai roared as his face was filled with rage. He kept struggling to get up, but the iron chains on his body didn't allow him to break free. The Mu family were all fed with the supreme profound medicine soup. Unable to use their profound energy, they had no way to resist. Mu Lai's eyes were red as he gritted his teeth and stared at Yi Qingqian. Come at me if you have the ability. The wife he loved dearly in the palm of his hand. The wife who usually couldn't bear to raise her voice. But she was slapped in front of his eyes. How could he tolerate this? Looking at Mu Lai's furious look, Yi Qingqian's heart finally felt a sense of pleasure. She giggled as she walked towards Shui Fei Shui, who was sent flying on the ground. Her gorgeous face revealed a vicious sneer. What's the point of coming at you? It's more interesting if I hit her and you feel heartache. She leaned over and grabbed Shui Fei Shui's hair. She lifted Shui Fei Shui up harshly. Shui Fei Shui had been in the pugilistic world. And even after many years of marriage, the pugilistic world spirit was still there. Even if her scalp was in pain, she didn't make a sound. Mu Lai clenched his teeth as his eyes turned red. He struggled with all his might, wanting to rush up and tear Yi Qingqian into pieces. But no matter how hard he tried, his hands and body were still bleeding from the friction of the chains. There was no way he could escape from the iron chains. The onlookers stared at this scene. Their hearts were burning with rage, but there was nothing they could do. Previously there was a cultivator, who had been saved by the Mu family, who wanted to save the Mu family. But before he got close to the altar, he was cut into pieces by that lady who looked like a demon fox. It was really 1,000 cuts. Not one more cut. Not one less cut. Right on the West Square, in front of thousands of people. The methods were bloody and cruel, leaving a shadow in everyone's mind. She wanted to save the Mu family, but she was afraid of the consequences. Mu Lai's actions obviously made Yi Qingqian happy. Her 5 fingers clasped Shui Fei Shui's chin as she looked down at the woman, who was obviously in her 30s, but still young and beautiful. It's said that a man loves a woman only because of her good looks. I really want to prove this, saying. Yi Qingqian's lips curled into a sinister smile. Madame Mu say, if I were to leave a few scars on your face, would your husband still regard you as his life? Shui Fei Shui sneered and spat on her face. Go ahead and try. Yi Qingqian's eyes were filled with coldness. She suddenly tightened her grip. Shui Fei Shui's face turned pale. The sharp pain in her lower jaw made her sweat profusely. Yi Qingqian raised her other hand and wiped the saliva off her face. Suddenly, he took out a dagger from somewhere and placed it on Shui Fei Shui's face. I'll fulfill your wish. Yi Qingqian, how dare you? Don't you dare touch her. I will never let you off. Perhaps it was because of his rage. Mu Lai broke free from the shackles of the chains. His hands, and the places where the chains were entangled were covered in blood. He didn't mind as he pounced in front of Yi Qingqian and pushed her away fiercely. Yi Qingqian had not expected the Mu family to break free from the chains. She couldn't react in time and was hit by Mu Lai. Yi Qingqian fell onto the ground, and because of this collision, Mu Lai hugged Shui Feishue and fell onto the ground. The supreme profound medicine in his body had long expelled his profound energy and strength out of his body. After Mu Lai fell onto the ground, he no longer had any strength. The guards at the side saw that something had happened to Yi Qingqian and rushed forward to surround the altar. Yi Qingqian got up with the help of the maid. Her sinister eyes looked coldly at the man and woman who were hugging each other tightly. The flames burning in her eyes became more and more vigorous. What a pair of lovers! I'll fulfill the affection between you. After midnight, I'll be the first to deal with the two of you. Yi Qingqian strode to the side of Mu Lai and his wife and looked down at them condescendingly. Now, I'll teach you what a well-behaved and sensible captive is. Star. Chapter 1951. A pair of lovers? Heh. Her biggest hobby now was to break up lovers and torture lovers. To see two people who loved each other unable to be together. The flames in Yi Qingqian's eyes were filled with a horrifying madness. She flipped her palm, and a long whip which was flickering with profound yin qi appeared in her palm. Yi Qingqian squinted her beautiful eyes as her lips curled into a sneer. After instructing the night watch, Heiji, who was returning to the altar, looked at that long whip, and her heart suddenly trembled. This long whip was the cursed magic weapon that Wolf Saint Dharma had gifted to Yi Qingqian, Dark Illusion Whip. This was one of the dark magic weapons. Compared to those so-called divine artifacts, its power could only be greater. Moreover, it had the ability to devour curses and darkness. Yi Qingqian rarely took out the Dark Illusion Whip. It could be seen that Yi Qingqian was really angry. Heiji suppressed the uneasiness in her heart as she lowered her head and returned to the reclining chair. Mu Lai saw the profound yin qi lingering on that long whip, and his expression suddenly changed. He was from the Mu family, which was one of the four great families. Even if he couldn't tell what kind of magic weapon it was. But he was very clear in his heart. Once they were hit by the magic weapon, they were human shells without any profound qi. They were unable to withstand the magic power of the magic weapon. What's more, there was a possibility that their souls would scatter. Mu Lai used the last of his strength to block Shui Feishue behind him. A pair of red eyes stared at Yi Qingqian resentfully. Yi Qingqian, my son cares about his mother the most. If you do anything to Feishue, don't even think of using us to force Yi Qingluo out. Finally anxious, Yi Qingqian laughed crazily. The long whip in her hand was like a poisonous snake as she looked ahead vigilantly, waiting for the opportunity to move. On the account that you are so protective of your wife, I will satisfy you. Her words just ended. Suddenly the long whip shook. Everyone saw a long whip which looked like a black poisonous snake flying straight over. That long whip was close to Mu Lai at the moment. Suddenly a burst of profound yin qi was set off. Bam! The long whip lashed on Mu Lai's face, leaving a bloody mark. The blood was mixed with black mysterious yin qi, which was corroding his wounds. Mu Lai's body fell heavily to the ground. Xiao! There was another sound of the whip tearing through the air. Shui Feishua's body was swept up by the long whip and thrown into the air. Yi Qingqian's hand that was holding onto the long whip suddenly gave it a tug. Shui Feishue fell heavily from the sky, with the pull of the long whip. Their falling speed was also extremely fast. Boom! With a loud thud, the entire altar was smashed into a huge pit. Crushed stones flew everywhere, and smoke and dust rose in spirals, covering everything on the altar. Mu Lai struggled to get up and shouted at the top of his lungs. Flying snow! Flying snow! With every shout, he coughed out a mouthful of blood. When the old and young of the Mu family saw this, all of them were so infuriated that green veins popped out, wishing that they could break free from the iron chains and rush up to kill Yi Qingqian. That height, that kind of strength, how could an ordinary person without any xian qi withstand it? Moreover, The altar had collapsed. Shui Feishue was afraid. Everyone's mood suddenly became heavy. Eldest young miss. Eldest young miss. Just as the atmosphere was inexplicably oppressive, the anger in the hearts of the people was also provoked, and could not be tolerated. On the altar, a panicked voice suddenly sounded. Chapter 1952. As the dust dispersed, everyone stared at that maidservant. Wasn't she the maidservant named Heiji, who had always been by Yi Qingqian's side? Eldest young miss? Wasn't that Yi Qingqian? Wasn't it Yi Qingqian, who threw Madame Mu into the ground with a whip? Why was it Yi Qingqian who fell into the deep pit? This turn of events left the commoners dumbfounded. Could it be that Shui Feishue had suddenly recovered her profound energy? Just as everyone was dumbstruck, a figure flew out from that huge deep pit. Carrying a terrifying profound energy, it broke through the clouds. A long blue dress drew a blue arc in midair. Like flowing water, it reflected the sunlight and emitted a clear and crystalline light. That person, other than Yi Qingqian, who else could it be? The person who fell into the deep pit and smashed into the deep pit was really Yi Qingqian. Everyone stared at Yi Qingqian, who was standing steadily on the altar, only to see Yi Qingqian in a sorry state. Her meticulously made-up hair had long been disheveled under that heavy impact, like weeds messy beyond compare. That beautiful face was ashen. Vaguely, it could be seen that her ice-like skin had a few scratches. It was obvious that Yi Qingqian's injury was not light. What was going on? Mu Lai, who was at a close distance, couldn't help but widen his eyes as he stared at Yi Qingqian in shock. After some time, he regained his senses and immediately climbed to the side of the deep pit, which was smashed out. Sticking his head out to take a look, there was a huge deep pit, deep into the ground. It was pitch black, and he couldn't see the shadow of the underground. But Mu Lai could feel that there was no one there. Shui Feishue was not in the deep pit. Yi Qingluo, you finally appeared. Yi Qingqian's angry voice suddenly rang. Everyone looked towards the direction of the voice. They saw Yi Qingqian, with a twisted face, staring at a certain place behind the altar. Looking closely, it could be seen that Yi Qingqian's petite body was trembling constantly. Her slender fingers clenched into fists. Yi Qingluo? Was Yi Qingluo here? Everyone's heart trembled as they opened their eyes wide to look for traces of Yi Qingluo. Hee, big sister is quite sharp. You actually know that I'm here. A clear laughter rang out, like pearls and jade falling from a plate. His laughter drifted with the wind. A slim figure appeared out of thin air. The young girl's flaming dress made her crystal-clear skin look even whiter and more tender, like an exquisite porcelain doll. Her eyebrows were like a painting, and her eyebrows were thin and dark. Her beauty could topple cities. That otherworldly temperament, even though he was just silently hovering in the air. Everyone had the urge to kneel down and worship the goddess. What shocked everyone even more was, in the young girl's arms was a woman in disheveled clothes, who was in an extremely sorry state. Wasn't that Shui Feishue? As it turned out, just as Yi Qingjian was about to throw Shui Feishue into the ground and forcefully smash Shui Feishue to death, was it Yi Qingluo who took action? Not only did she save Shui Feishue, and even blasted Yi Qingqian into the ground, looking across the entire Shilin Square. Thousands of people, thousands of pairs of eyes. Not a single one of them noticed Yi Qingluo's appearance. Yi Qingluo? How powerful was she exactly? That was Yi Qingluo, the young lady who shocked the 4 continents and was hailed as a legend by everyone. She actually really appeared. It was as if there was a huge drum beating in the hearts of the commoners. Yi Qingluo slowly stood on the altar as she placed Shui Feishue down. Her hand was still supporting Shui Feishue as her lips curled slightly as she smiled sweetly. Madame Mu, are you feeling better? Chapter 1953. This matter started because of me. If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have suffered such humiliation. Yi Qingluo supported Shui Feishue and sent her to Mu Lai's side. Leave the rest to me. Mu Lai's hands trembled as he hugged Shui Feishue. Both husband and wife's gazes fell onto Yiqing Luo without blinking. The young lady's smile was bright and beautiful, with a devilish charm and wanton. But when she said this sentence, the Mu couple obviously saw the chilling murderous intent in the young lady's pupils. No matter who it was, they would be stunned by that beautiful face. This was the lady who made their two sons infatuated. Their two sons' eyesight was indeed not bad. Miss Yi. Shui Fei Shui opened her mouth. Her gaze was filled with worry. Before she finished her sentence, Yiqing Luo had already looked at her. Her shimmering eyes flickered with a hint of gloomy luster. Yiqing Luo smiled slightly. At an angle that Yiqing Qian couldn't see, she winked at Shui Fei Shui slyly. Immediately she said, Zifan and Zifei are fine. You don't have to worry. Now, you should worry about yourselves. Yiqing Qian's sharp hateful voice was heard from behind. A burst of cold profound yin qi pressed towards them. Yiqing Luo's slender brows rose slightly as her fingers flicked. The feather fan opened up on her fingertips and rolled up a hurricane. The two forces collided, and the profound qi particles exploded in midair. Yiqing Luo leisurely turned around. Her expression was calm as she looked at Yiqing Qian teasingly. Tisk tisk. Eldest sister is still as impatient as usual. No wonder. You will always be my defeated opponent. You. Yiqing Qian was so angry that she gritted her teeth. The moment she saw Yiqing Luo, the anger in her heart surged uncontrollably. She couldn't wait to peel off Yiqing Luo's tendons and skin her. To destroy everything Yiqing Luo had. Let's see what Yiqing Luo had to be arrogant in front of her, flaunting her prowess. The more she thought, the more the resentment in Yiqing Qian's heart grew. Her sharp eyes turned cold as she attacked towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Then let everyone take a good look, and see who is the loser. The long whip in Yiqing Qian's hand cracked loudly in the air. There was no hesitation in her attacks at all. As though he wanted to kill Yiqing Luo in one strike. Yiqing Luo sneered as she leapt forward. The glowing flame fan unfurled, and launched an attack. As she intertwined with Yiqing Jian, she lured Yiqing Jian to the other side of the altar. Yiqing Qian was most familiar with her whip skills, plus the power of the cursed magic tool. Yiqing Qian's attack was totally unstoppable. He could easily injure the others on the altar. When she saw the cursed magic tool, Old Song had given her some information about it in his mind. Cursed magic tools were extremely evil among darkness magic tools. His strength surpassed that of a divine artifact. He also has the evil power of darkness. Usually, people who use cursed magic tools were either demons, or on the verge of becoming demons. They were all bloodthirsty, murderous demons. Cursed magic tools were the most frightening. Even wounds inflicted by demonic artifacts would be corroded by demonic qi. It would be fine if he dealt with it in time. If it wasn't handled properly, the demonic artifact would corrode everything in the human body, and eventually turn into white bones. Earlier, the dark illusion whip had whipped Mu Lai. From the wound on Mu Lai's face, Yiqing Luo had almost determined the degree of demonic qi brought by the dark illusion whip. She narrowed her eyes as the glowing flame fan in her hand waved continuously. Star. Chapter 1954. The raging flame fan was like a flame, jumping around Yiqing Luo's fingertips. Vaguely, as Yiqing Luo's movements became bigger, the sparks turned into a huge fire dragon in a split second. Following that, the raging flame fan shot out numerous slender silver threads, entangling towards Yiqing Qian's direction. Yiqing Luo, do you think you can still trap me now? Yiqing Qian snorted coldly. The resentment in her eyes was extremely cold. The dark magic whip in her hand swam strangely, piercing through the air, looking sharper than a sharp blade. That whip lashed fiercely on the altar. It could pull out numerous long whip marks that were deeply embedded in the ground. Had to admit, Yiqing Qian's whip skills, coupled with the power of the cursed magic weapon. One after another, the long whip struck towards Yiqing Luo's face fiercely. The angle of the long whip was very tricky. Yiqing Qian obviously wanted to ruin Yiqing Luo's looks. And Yiqing Luo's figure was agile, her footwork almost made her come and go without a trace. Yiqing Qian, could not even touch the corner of Yi Qing Luo's clothes. On the contrary, Yi Qing Qian herself, under Yi Qing Luo's teasing time and time again, the hurricane and profound energy, which Yi Qing Luo unleashed broke that exquisite and gorgeous long dress, which was like water ripples. Bright red blood oozed out from the wound. Yi Qing Qian bared her teeth in anger. Her expression was sinister, staring fiercely at Yi Qing Luo's direction. The long whip was going to take Yi Qing Luo's life. However, the long whip's lightning-fast attack had yet to come close. Yi Qing Luo disappeared again. Yi Qing Luo, if you have the ability, don't try to escape like a turtle. Yi Qing Qian gritted her teeth in anger. She felt like a pet being teased. Yi Qing Luo snorted lightly, standing 3 steps away from Yi Qing Qian, squinting at her. In that case, eldest sister wants to fight with me openly? Staring at Yi Qing Luo's clear eyes, Yi Qing Qian's heart was overwhelmed with a feeling of horror. Fight her fair and square. Yi Qing Qian's sinister eyes turned cold as her murderous aura appeared. That's right. Then I shall fulfill sister's wish. Yi Qing Luo chuckled lightly, like a warm breeze, blowing against everyone's eardrums. The beautiful girl was as enchanting as a painting. In the next instant, he disappeared into thin air. Yi Qing Luo had unknowingly stood in front of Yi Qing Qian. They were face to face, extremely close to one another. Yi Qing Qian was so shocked that she took a step back and let out an ah scream. Before he could react, Yi Qing Luo's lips were already curling into a smile. Her bottomless enchanting eyes seemed to be swirling with a whirlpool. Yi Qing Qian was so shocked that her heart almost jumped out of her throat. Her face was pale, and she kept retreating. However, Yi Qing Luo had already waved her fist and directly punched Yi Qing Qian's face. Pung! A punch landed. It did not carry the slightest bit of profound energy. It was a solid punch. Yi Qing Qian's nose spurted out a stream of blood. In an instant, it dyed Yi Qing Qian's exquisite face. Boom! There was another loud noise. Yi Qing Qian fell straight onto the altar. Her nose was bleeding. Her robe was full of scratches and blood splattered everywhere. She was thrown onto the ground in a sorry state. The current Yi Qing Qian was in a sorry state no matter how one looked at it. Where was the slightest bit of his previous elegance, arrogance and despotic demeanor from before? The surrounding commoners couldn't help but burst out laughing. They expressed that although they didn't have any good impression of Yi Qing Luo, but seeing them torturing Yi Qing Qian they felt great. Someone should take care of that vicious woman. Star. Chapter 1955. Yi Qing Luo walked slowly to the front of Yi Qing Jian. She looked down at Yi Qing Jian from above. Just like before, Yi Qing Jian looked down at Mulai, that high and mighty, insufferably arrogant, as if she was looking at an ant. Yi Qing Jian only felt a surge of blood in her chest. A mouthful of blood gushed out from her throat. She stared fiercely at Yi Qing Luo, her eyes filled with hatred. Yi Qing Luo's eyes curved into crescents as her lips curled into a faint cold arc of ridicule, as though she was ridiculing her for overestimating herself. What a pity, elder sister. Even if it's just an aboveboard, I can still face you. Her light voice was mixed with endless mockery. Yi Qing Jian's whole body tensed up, trembling violently. It was angry. Yi Qing Jian was so angry that her whole body was trembling. She couldn't believe that Yi Qing Luo was so powerful. She thought that with the wolf saint technique threatening the pharaoh, using the dark arts to give her a steady stream of profound yin qi, so that she could continue to upgrade her profound grade. The current her strength could totally reach the level of a sky mystic supreme, coupled with the dark magic whip that the wolf saint technique gave her. No matter what, to defeat Yi Qing Luo, it was totally effortless. But in fact, the one who fell to the ground was her sky mystic supreme. Looking at the entire Nirvana realm, the number of people who could reach the Sky Mystic Supreme could be counted with 2 hands. Of course, there were many experts who liked to live incognito, but no matter how many people there were who hid their identities, there was only one problem. Sky Mystic Supreme was rare in the world. Yi Qing Jian would never believe it. Yi Qing Luo, a waste for 15 years. could be more powerful than a sky mystic supreme in such a short period of time. There must be someone secretly helping Yiqing Luo. It must be so. Yiqing Jian kept finding excuses to numb herself. Looking at Yiqing Luo's face filled with ridicule, she gritted her teeth and suddenly got up from the ground. The blue water pattern dress was like rolling waves. The ripples of the flowing water were so bright. Yiqing Luo had already guessed what Yiqing Jian wanted to do. At this time, even if she chased up, it would be too late. She simply stood on the spot, looking at Yiqing Jian with a smile. It was as if he was watching a monkey show. After Yiqing Jian left Yiqing Luo's attack range, her figure stretched out as she headed straight towards the direction where the Mu family's old and young were tied up in a row. Her gloomy eyes were burning with rage. She quickly stretched out her hand and grabbed Old Master Mu. The long whip in her hand was placed across Old Master Mu's neck. Yiqing Luo, how dare you? Don't forget the Mu family is in my hands. Father! Old man! Mu family's old and young cried out in shock as they looked at Yiqing Jian anxiously. These cries of surprise pleased Yiqing Jian. She hooked her arms around Old Master Mu's neck and unlocked the iron chain. Then step by step, she walked towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Yiqing Luo, drink the supreme profound medicine soup. Yiqing Jian glanced sideways. He Ji understood and immediately took out a medicine bottle from her waist. That medicine bottle was thrown towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she quietly watched the medicine bottle drop beside her feet. The smile on her lips was tainted with a trace of cold ridicule. Yiqing Jian raged as she pressed the long whip against Old Master Mu's neck even tighter. Slut! If you don't drink the supreme profound medicine soup, I will kill Old Master Mu right in front of you. Star. Chapter 1956. Despicable. Shameless. When the commoners heard that, they clenched their fists in anger as they stared fiercely at Yiqing Jian's direction. This woman was truly a first-class poisonous woman. The commoners had witnessed Yiqing Luo's ability earlier. Thinking of those rumors about Yiqing Luo, these commoners who were blaming Yiqing Luo had no choice but to place their hopes on her. Only Yiqing Luo could kill Yiqing Jian. Only Yiqing Luo could save the West Continent. If Yiqing Luo drank the profound medicine soup, wouldn't she be at Yiqing Jian's mercy? Moreover, based on Yiqing Jian's vicious temperament, even if Yiqing Luo really listened to her and drank the profound medicine soup, Yiqing Jian would never let the Mu family off. But if Yiqing Luo didn't drink the profound medicine soup, the Mu family would still have to die. How should Yiqing Luo choose? The commoners placed their hopeful gazes on Yiqing Luo. The atmosphere at this moment became extremely oppressive. Yiqing Jian obviously knew what everyone was thinking. She raised her lips. That face, which was covered by messy long hair, still couldn't hide the murderous intent she was giving off. What she wanted was exactly like this. No matter what Yiqing Luo chose, Yiqing Luo would eventually become the sinner of the West Continent. She wanted to destroy the West Continent. Destroy the continent which used to laugh at her. Moreover, she wanted to push the destruction of the West Continent to Yiqing Luo alone. She wanted Yiqing Luo to be condemned by thousands of people. In the historical records, it was a calamity which brought calamity to the country and people. Yiqing Luo, I don't have that much patience to wait for your decision. Old Master Mu's life is in your hands. Yiqing Jian screamed sharply, her eyes filled with complacency. Lass, don't listen to her. I'm already so old, I've lived enough. Don't worry about me. Just do it and kill this little slut. Mu Xiao spat. He wasn't afraid of the dark illusory whip on his neck at all. Shut up. Yiqing Jian increased the strength of the magic whip. The magic whip, which was surrounded by black qi, drew a line of blood on Old Master Mu's neck. Immediately, her eyes flashed with madness. Yiqing Luo, immediately pick up the profound medicine soup and drink it. Yiqing Luo lowered her eyes and stared at the medicine bottle by her feet as she pushed it with her toes. The medicine bottle rolled on the altar, emitting a clear gurgling sound. The breeze swirled her loose black hair around her shoulders. Her red dress was burning like a raging flame. The peerlessly beautiful and enchanting young lady slowly raised her head. Her charming eyes were flowing with light, as she looked at Yi Qingjian with a smile that didn't look like a smile. She curled her lips and chuckled. The laughter was mixed with extreme mockery and disdain. "You, what are you laughing at?" Yi Qingqian's heart trembled. An inexplicable fear towards Yi Qingluo welled up in her heart again. Yi Qingluo stared fixedly at Yi Qingqian as she crossed her arms over her chest and gave an incomparably calm smile. "Why don't you give it a try? Smart eldest sister. You should be very clear that once you hurt anyone from the Mu family, the consequences would be, right?" She deliberately raised her eyebrows and dragged out the last word. The threat was obvious. Yi Qingqian was so infuriated that her body tensed up. But the magic whip which was stuck on Mu Zhao's neck was unable to move. She understood. Of course she understood. Once she killed Mu Zhao, what would be the consequences? Now she had the entire Mu family in her hands. So Yi Qingluo didn't dare to act rashly. But if she killed one of them, Yi Qingluo would absolutely strike her without any qualms. Yi Qingluo, that slut, actually thought of such a despicable idea. Star. Chapter 1957. When the commoners heard Yi Qingluo's words, initially they didn't react to what she meant. Later on, looking at Yi Qingqian's expression, they were suddenly enlightened. Momentarily, the commoners were filled with emotions. This 15-year-old young lady, who was hailed as a legend indeed, lived up to her reputation. Under such circumstances, her brain could still move so quickly. Not only did she ensure the safety of the Mu family, she even threatened Yi Qingqian instead. Even though Yi Qingqian held the lives of the Mu family in her hands. But Yi Qingluo could still be on the same status as her. What kind of boldness did she have to be able to do this to such an extent? If it was them, they would absolutely not have this boldness and the guts to use the lives of the Mu family as a threat instead. If Yi Qingluo knew what the commoners were thinking about, she would definitely touch her chin as she gave an evil smile. "Foolish humans, you're still too inexperienced." How could she, Yi Qingluo, possibly just simply threaten someone who dared to threaten her? Yi Qingqian was extremely infuriated, but she indeed didn't dare to act rashly. Her expression was gloomy as she looked at Mu Zhao, who had a fearless expression and was still looking at her with ridicule. Forcefully suppressing the surging anger in her heart, a glint flashed past her eyes. "Yi Qingluo, did you really think that I only have the Mu family as a bargaining chip?" She clasped Mu Zhao's neck tightly as her long whip danced, pointing towards the surroundings of West Lawn Square. "Towards those thousands of commoners. These are all my bargaining chips." Yi Qingqian's words had just landed, not knowing when, waves after waves of profound yin qi had surged over from the vicinity of West Lawn Square. Those profound yin qi brought along a sinister cold storm, as it wantonly plundered everything around it. In just a short moment, it had covered the entire West Lawn Square tightly. Following that, the entire crowd of commoners were surrounded by a total of 200 Dark Forces black robes. "You, Yi Qingqian, you despicable woman. Dark Forces. These are all people from the Dark Forces. What are you trying to do? Yi Qingqian, do you want all of us to become the Dark Forces' food?" When the commoners saw those 200 black-robed remnants, their expressions had a huge change. These black-robed remnants had obviously been lying in ambush in the surroundings. He had been waiting for this moment. The commoners actually knew clearly in their hearts that they were forced to stand by the side of the public square by Yi Qingqian was actually for convenience, so that Yi Qingqian could kill them on the spot. But when he saw so many black-robed survivors, the people's hearts couldn't help but tremble in fear. Yi Qingqian allowed those people to accuse and abuse her. In her eyes, there was only Yi Qingluo alone. She stared sinisterly at Yi Qingluo, hoping to see a sliver of panic and fear on Yi Qingluo's face. But after staring at Yi Qingluo for some time, she was disappointed. When Yi Qingluo saw the surrounding black-robed remnants, the expression on her face didn't change at all. He seemed to have guessed that such a thing would happen. This really made Yi Qingjian feel as though she had used all her strength to hit a ball of soft cotton. Not only did it not let her vent the anger in her heart, on the contrary, it made her feel even more aggrieved. Yi Qingqian was annoyed, so annoyed that her entire heart was burning. A pair of fox-like beautiful eyes gradually exuded mysterious yin qi. Wisps of mysterious yin qi swirled in her eyes. A strong murderous intent shot out. Chapter 1958. The dark illusory whip was laced with a dense profound yin qi. In the air, it gave off a piercing sound. When it landed heavily, the entire altar was embedded several meters deep as black qi curled up, which was extremely horrifying. The commoners instinctively screamed out in fear as they retreated a few steps, but they were pressured by the 200 black-robed remnants behind them till they couldn't even take half a step back. Yi Qingqian gave a cold laugh as she pinched Mu Zhao's shoulder, and with a leap, she charged towards the direction of those commoners. She wanted Yi Qingluo to see it with her own eyes. How she wanted her to see with her own eyes how she killed those commoners. She wanted Yi Qingluo to think about it all the time. Those innocent commoners all died because of her, Yi Qingluo. Ha! Behind her, Yi Qingluo's leisurely laughter was filled with ridicule, as it was filled with endless ridicule. Her slender brows rose slightly as her brows revealed a flirtatious expression, which made her look extremely alluring. This wasn't a 15-year-old young lady's temperament and charm, but when it was on Yi Qingluo, it seemed to be natural. Yi Qingqian, do you really think that everything is under your control? The young lady's sweet voice was mixed with a sweet smile, as though it was just a simple conversation. But her words made one feel a chill in one's heart. Immediately after, the young lady giggled. Unfortunately, wherever I'm around, you're destined to lose control. Because you'll forever be my supporting role, forever to be stepped on by me. Her voice paused and her tone suddenly changed, extremely incisive as she said word by word. Don't turn over. Arrogant and presumptuous words. Insolent and unbridled ridicule. Yi Qingqian was even more annoyed hearing that. Her eyes were burning with fury, as all her thoughts were placed on those commoners. The dark illusory whip in her hands was like 10,000 poisonous snakes, as it madly swept towards the commoners. Ah! Suddenly, a miserable shriek was heard. The originally arrogant Yi Qingqian had yet to make a move when her body crashed heavily onto the side of the altar. Following that, she was hit by the side and fell below the altar, right beside those commoners' feet. The commoners retreated frantically as if they had touched the plague, and they screamed in disgust. That poisonous snake, which had yet to fly out, also retracted back because of Yi Qingqian's death. Yi Qingqian fell onto the ground as the dark illusion whip lost the support of the profound energy, and was like a dead object as it circled around Yi Qingqian. She abruptly stood up and fearfully stared at Mu Zhao, who was floating in midair and laughing out loud. You! How could you? Just now, just as she was about to attack the commoners. It was Mu Zhao who took advantage of the moment when she was in a fit of rage and anxiously attacked her chest with his palm. This caused her, who had almost gone berserk, to shatter the condensation of her profound qi. The backlash from the profound yin aura caused her internal organs to feel an intense pain. Not just Grandpa but also us. At some point, the 14 people of the Mu family who were tied up in chains stood up. They were supporting each other, and their imposing manner was overbearing as they stared coldly at Yi Qingqian. The profound qi that lingered around each of them was fluctuating. At the very least, they were all profound practitioners who were above the 3rd grade of the Earth profound realm. The commoners sighed in their hearts. No wonder they were one of the 4 great profound families, the Mu family. Not only did they have outstanding abilities in terms of alchemy and treatment, even his own profound strength was maintained at a level that could only be high and not low. Looking at the aggressive people of the Mu family, Mu Qiqi was stunned. Chapter 1959. She had obviously witnessed the Mu family being fed the supreme profound medicine soup with her own eyes. She had also tested it personally. The Mu family's profound energy had indeed been sealed. She was waiting for Yi Qing Luo to come to the West Square. In front of Yi Qing Luo, to cripple the Mu family's meridians, brutally killing them. How could the Mu family's profound energy be restored? This was impossible. Where did the deviation go? Looking at Yi Qing Qian's distorted face, extremely pale and filled with disbelief, Shui Fei Shui gave a light snort. With Mu Lai's support, she slowly walked out. Her slender jade-like fingers pinched a medicine bottle. She shook it and sneered. This is all thanks to Miss Qing Luo for giving me the antidote for the supreme profound medicine soup. Shui Fei Shui's heart was filled with admiration towards Yi Qing Luo. This kind of admiration had already surpassed the boundaries of age. No matter if Yi Qing Luo was just a 15-year-old young lady, Shui Fei Shui's respect towards Yi Qing Luo was from the bottom of her heart. The antidote for the supreme profound medicine soup was secretly given to her by Yi Qing Luo when she first appeared and saved her. When Yi Qing Luo saved her, the profound medicine soup on her had already been cured. After that, while Yi Qing Luo attracted Yi Qing Qian's attention, she fed the antidote to the Mu family. While Yi Qing Luo was intentionally provoking Yi Qing Qian, constantly attracting her attention, they had already taken the opportunity to adjust the profound energy in their bodies. Shui Fei Shui's gaze towards Yi Qing Luo was filled with gentleness. If this lass could become the Mu family's daughter-in-law, how good would that be? Her ability was strong, and she had extremely high attainments in medicinal pills. Unfortunately, her two brats were not worthy of this lass. Mu Lai saw through his beloved wife's thoughts with one look. He smiled helplessly, holding Shui Fei Shui's hand tightly. Now is not the time to think about these things. After Mu Lai's reminder, Shui Fei Shui finally straightened her expression, raised her brows and looked at Yi Qing Qian. Yi Qing Qian, as the eldest Missy of Three Springs sect, you borrowed the dark forces to destroy Three Springs sect, and even the entire West continent. This is unforgivable. My Mu family absolutely won't let you off easily. Mu Xiao stood in front of the young and old of the Mu family, full of dignity. I, Mu Xiao, have retired from the martial world for many years, but today, in order to restore peace to the West Wave continent, I, Mu Xiao, will do everything in my power to expel your dark forces from the West Wave continent. Although the Mu family is the most low-key among the four great families, he had always focused on medicine shops and medical centers. However, when they worked together and released their might, it was enough to intimidate everyone present. The hearts of the people also seemed to be ignited by the Mu family. Yi Qing Qian turned pale with fright. She looked at everyone in the Mu family. Their faces were filled with anger, as if they wanted to tear her into pieces. Her heart trembled violently. No, today was her home court. How could she possibly allow Yi Qing Luo to retaliate? Yi Qing Qian was the real main character. In the West continent, she could summon clouds and rain with a flip of her hand. Everyone had submitted to her power. She would not fail. She still had the dark forces. She didn't believe that the guards of the West continent plus the dark forces couldn't defeat a dozen Mu family members. What's more, she still had millions of people as a bargaining chip. Based on the kind temperament of the Mu family, they absolutely wouldn't dare to make a move easily. She still had a backup plan. As long as she could drag on till the Wolf Saint technique rushed over. Yi Qing Luo and this group of people who didn't know what's good for them had to die. All of them had to die. With this thought in mind, Yi Qing Qian immediately dashed towards the direction of those people. Star. Chapter 1960. Mu family, as long as one of you makes a move, I will kill a commoner. Yi Qing Qian's hoarse voice bellowed hysterically. She rushed to the front of the commoners. The long whip rolled, and 10 over commoners were sucked into the whip. The commoners' faces revealed a terrified expression as they screamed. Yi Qing Qian whipped the long whip fiercely, and pulled those 10 over commoners towards her. She turned her head and a maniacal smile surfaced on her malevolent face. You still want to scheme against me? As long as you still have a conscience, you will never be able to defeat me. Mu family's old and young's faces sunk. They clenched their fists tightly as they suppressed the anger that was about to explode. Yi Qingqian had indeed grabbed hold of their weakness. They were concerned about the commoners, and there was no way they could disregard the innocent commoners, especially when they saw those commoners' terrified expressions. This made them even more worried that they would not be able to do anything to Yi Qingqian. Mu Zhao's face flushed red. He had lived for so long, and this was the first time he had met such a shameless and vicious woman. Looking at those commoners' pleading eyes, listening to those commoners' terrified cries, Mu Zhao clenched his fists tightly as his veins popped out, and every piece of muscle was tensed up. In the end, he couldn't stand the commoners' cries. He turned his gaze towards Yi Qingluo. Miss Qingluo. Mu family's old and young sighed slightly. They had not expected that as the older generation of the four great families, they had to seek help from a 15-year-old young lady when they met with trouble. Yi Qingluo's lips hung a faintly discernible smile. Her arms crossed her chest as her sweet voice had no trace of nervousness. Old master, don't worry. 5 simple words totally didn't explain what she would do. But for no reason, it made Mu family's old and young heaved a sigh of relief, as they felt inexplicably at ease. Yi Qingluo's brows rose frivolously as her eyes were filled with smiles as she stared straight at Yi Qingqian. Yi Qingluo hadn't said a word. Yi Qingqian, who met Yi Qingluo's gaze, was the first to fly into a rage. Yi Qingluo, don't you care about the commoners' lives? Then let's try and see if you kill me first, or I kill all these commoners first. Yi Qingluo was still smiling. She didn't move, just using that kind of smiling yet not smiling, examining gaze quietly and faintly staring at Yi Qingjian. This kind of gaze made Yi Qingqian almost go crazy. But at this moment, among the crowd of commoners, a loud and clear voice suddenly rang. Yi Qingqian, you destroyed our home, and now you want to make use of us to threaten Madame Yi Qingluo. Even if we die, we won't let you do whatever you want. We owe the Mu family a great debt of gratitude. Usually they spent all their wealth for us. Today, I want the Mu family to sacrifice their lives for us. I can't do it. Yi Qingqian, even an ant can swallow an elephant. Even if you're cultivators, no matter how powerful you are. So what? We have millions of companions. One after another, the rousing cries stirred up everyone's hearts. Following the impassioned speeches of those people, the people seemed to be reminded of the Mu family, how they usually did good deeds, and served the people wholeheartedly. Today, they wanted the Mu family to once again be controlled by that wicked woman Yi Qingqian? No, they could not stand by and watch as the Mu family was once again controlled by others. Moreover, that person was right. Ants could swallow an elephant, although their strength was small, but they had the advantage in numbers. Before Yi Qingqian could react, a group of commoners suddenly went crazy as they charged towards her. Yi Qingqian was forcefully pressed onto the ground by 10 over people. Losing the support of profound energy, the illusion whip loosened its grip on those 10 over commoners. Star. Chapter 1961. Ah, you bunch of damned lowly commoners. How dare you hit me? Do you believe that I will make you, Ah? Yi Qingqian's miserable cries rang. Those frenzied commoners didn't give Yi Qingqian any chance to react. Even if Yi Qingluo wanted to release her profound qi to shake off those commoners, the minute her profound qi was released, before she could shake off the commoners, there were commoners who accurately pressed on her pulse. Following that, the commoners' bodies and those tyrannical fists landed on her. She had no way to raise her concentration and release her profound qi to resist. Yi Qingqian struggled for a few moments, and under the frenzied violence of the commoners, she could only beg bitterly. However, those commoners' eyes were already red from the beating. They couldn't wait to kill Yi Qingqian directly and have a quick death. How could they possibly let Yi Qingqian off, just because she begged for mercy? Who asked you to be so arrogant? Who asked you to be so arrogant? Who asked you to use your status as a cultivator to strut around? Who asked you to capture the Mu families old and young to threaten Yiqing Luo? Who asked you to still want to kill us? If I don't beat you up till you are covered with injuries, if I don't beat you up till you kneel down and call me daddy, I won't have the face to call myself a commoner." The anger and resentment in the hearts of the common people were instantly appeased. There was no mercy in her attacks. Even with the cultivator's chi protecting her, under the furious beating of hundreds of commoners, Yiqing Qian could only inhale but not exhale. This scene made the Mu families old and young dumbstruck. They looked at Yiqing Luo in astonishment. This is also part of your plan?" Old Master Mu asked in a daze. Seeing Yiqing Luo nodding, Mu families old and young expressed that this lady was simply too terrifying. It was as if everything was under her control. Where did she get the confidence from, to think that she could incite those commoners? If the commoners were afraid of death, wouldn't that incite failure? Yiqing Luo's lips curled slightly as her long and narrow eyes were filled with craftiness. "Because I believe the Mu family's position in their hearts. As long as they still have a heart, they will remember what you've done for them." She chuckles and looks at Mu Xiao with admiration. "It's all thanks to Grandpa Mu for leading the Mu family to be so upright." Mu family's elder Xiao looked at Yiqing Luo's smiling face and remained silent for a long time. This girl was really amazing. Previously he heard the two young lads mentioning about Yiqing Luo nonstop. They became interested in the girl. Now he saw it with his own eyes. Their fondness towards Yiqing Luo increased. His strength was outstanding, he was loyal, and he had a brilliant mind. He was neither servile nor overbearing, neither arrogant nor rash. Such an amazing girl would definitely become a great person in the future. The two brats in their family had never done anything meaningful in their daily lives. Now he had finally done something right, making friends with a miraculous lady like Yiqing Luo. For the Mu family, it was a great fortune. If Mu Zifan and Mu Zifei were present at this moment, they would probably have to wipe away their tears. Were they even related by blood? Below the altar, Yiqing Qian's voice became softer and softer. Yiqing Luo then slowly opened her mouth. "Stop, if you continue fighting, someone will really die." Her calm and sweet voice was extremely pleasing to the ear. She was obviously using an ordinary tone and saying ordinary words. Reverberating in the commoners' ears, it easily made those commoners to stop. Their irritable and furious hearts seemed to have calmed down in that clear spring-like voice. Chapter 1962. This is the beloved bed warming made of the leader of the dark forces. If you kill her, I'm afraid it will incur the hatred of that leader. Yiqing Luo smiled lightly as she slowly leapt down from the altar. She took leisurely steps and stopped beside Yiqing Qian. When the commoners heard that, they instantly regained their senses. A look of fear and horror appeared on his face. The bed warming made of the leader of the dark forces? If they really killed Yiqing Qian, would the dark forces let them off? Luckily, they still retained their rationality, and when they were beating Yiqing Qian up, they didn't hit her vital points. As for the female commoners, their gazes towards Yiqing Qian were filled with disdain. On the contrary, they regretted not kicking her a few more times earlier. A vixen who relied on her seductive looks, they thought that Yiqing Qian was some official in the dark forces. They had not expected that she was just a bed-warming maid, merely a vixen who used her power to bully others. No matter what the commoners were thinking, they had retreated out of Yiqing Qian's boundary, giving up the space to Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Qian laid on the ground on her last breath, twitching. Her clothes had long since been pulled, revealing her skin. A head of messy hair full of dirt. There wasn't a single spot on her body which was unscathed. It could be seen how vicious those commoners were. If it was any other cultivator, they probably wouldn't be able to survive after being beaten up by hundreds, or even thousands of people. Not knowing what kind of transformation Yiqing Qian had done to her body in the dark forces through the dark arts. Not only was she still alive, the injuries on her body were only superficial wounds. But it didn't harm her life. Yiqing Luo rubbed her chin as she stared at Yiqing Qian calmly. The current Yiqing Qian shouldn't be considered as a person. This kind of iron body she probably had long become an immortal monster. You slut, I won't want to kill you. Yi Qingqian widened her eyes, which were filled with hatred as she stared fiercely at Yi Qing Luo. She opened her mouth and let out a low, intermittent roar. Yi Qing Luo looked down at her, looking at Yi Qingqian's disheveled state, but still tenacious life force. She sighed softly. Yi Qingqian, you're really a monster. Yi Qingqian's face instantly turned pale, even though he was in a sorry state, and had all sorts of scars on his face. Yi Qing Luo could still see through her pale face. Ah! Yi Qing Luo half squatted down a pill from her fingertip, flicked into Yi Qingqian's mouth. It melted in her mouth, and Yi Qingqian had no chance to spit it out. Her entire body convulsed in pain as she struggled. A pair of eyes stared venomously at Yi Qing Luo, as though she was questioning Yi Qing Luo on what medicine she had fed her. Yi Qing Luo clapped her hands as she smiled lightly. It's just a medicinal pill to replenish your energy. Anyway, you're an immortal monster, so just stay alive and let me torture you. Nonsense. I'm not a monster, you are. Yi Qingqian's eyes were flustered, as though she had not expected that Yi Qing Luo had seen through all her secrets. Her breathing was hurried, as she looked in terror at Yi Qing Luo, who was slowly approaching. Suddenly, strength came from nowhere. Enduring the intense pain from being beaten up, he got up from the ground. But before she could take a step forward and run a step, suddenly a tearing pain came from the sole of her feet. It was as if something was tearing at her feet. Following that was the intense pain of her bones being smashed. Both her feet knelt heavily on the ground. Yi Qingqian raised her head in terror as she stared at Yi Qing Luo. What did you do to me? My body. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.